Jiang is definitely getting some signal boosting from somewhere. I love for how 1 second after you brought him up, I was like, who on earth is Professor John? Jiang, Jiang. And then they allow him to fucking teach in Beijing high schools, is what I was reading. He was involved, according to his wiki page. Why don't we just get into this? Why don't we just start? I was going to start with other stuff. Why don't we just get into this? So let's look at his wiki real quick. Wikipedia is not a good source in general for highly controversial information. Take everything here with a grain of salt. And if you ever do use Wikipedia for anything, you see all those little numbers, like it says Jiang Xueqin, and there's a little one there, and then born 1976, and then there's a little 2, and then see after education reforms in China, the 5 and 6 in superscript up above the midline. You want to check the sources if you ever use this, because sometimes you'll read articles on things related to politics or history, and they're just, the entire article is written off of one source, and that's insufficient. Even if it's a good source, that's not sufficient for writing an encyclopedia article. So Wikipedia tends to be not the best on particularly controversial subjects. Even on less controversial subjects, you have to check the sources sometimes. And people will say, well, they have editors and things like that. Yeah, they do. But if you really want to know about something, this is not a good source. Still, for popular figures, like a YouTuber, they're not going to be in a real encyclopedia. So, anyway. So some rough background, and we'll take this with a grain of salt. He was born 1976, so he's kind of like a young Gen Xer. I got to say he looks older than that to me. He is a Chinese-Canadian educator and commentator. In the 2000s, he was involved in education reforms in China. Tells you something about where China's headed. Since 2022, he has worked as a teacher at Moonshot Academy High School in Beijing. He's also known for his YouTube channel, Predictive History, on which he styles himself as Professor Jiang. So he's not a professor. He's a high school teacher. And to my understanding, he has never taught at the college level or higher. But he does kind of pass himself off that way. Now, I have in some of these live streams called myself Professor S, but that's really more to pass myself off as a mutant than as a professor. But yeah, don't do that. This is a guy who's definitely like twisting his academic credentials to give the veneer of legitimacy and authority to what he's saying. As you will see, it is absolute, just stinking waste. Anyway, he was born in Guangdong. His father was a high school teacher in China. At the end of the Cultural Revolution, when he was 6, his family immigrated to Canada, where they settled in Toronto. His father became a short-order cook. His mother a seamstress. He said he had a poor childhood, including having to wear hand-me-down clothes. He said he was awarded a scholarship, attended Yale College after being rejected by MIT, Princeton, and Harvard, and he obtained a BA in English Literature from Yale in 1999. He holds Canadian citizenship. So nothing to do with political science or anything like that. It's English Lit. That's his background. Although he also says, he said in the Mehdi Hassan interview that he had more of like a math and physics background prior to that, I guess in high school. So he uses an interdisciplinary approach or multidisciplinary approach that some people find confusing. No, I think it's more that what you're saying is like incoherent nonsense, which is easily disproved. Just the facts of what you're saying are easily disproved. Anyway, it says in 1998, while still an undergraduate at Yale, he worked his first teaching job, which was a 6-month stint at the affiliated high school of Peking University in Beijing. After graduation, he fell into deep frustration, and this part I think is key, when he failed to publish his own book or get articles published in magazines. Quote, "I felt lost, angry, and bewildered by the world. I jumped from one job to another, never settled down, and eventually fell into severe depression when I was almost 30. And then while suffering from that depression, which continued for the next 5 years, in 2000, he moved to Beijing, where he worked small stints as a freelance journalist. He wrote for publications such as the American Christian Science Monitor and the Hong Kong-based Far Eastern Economic Review. And then he instituted educational reforms at Shenzhen Middle School in 2002. And he was contracted in 2001 to conduct an undercover U.S.-funded PBS documentary about the labor movement in China. Well, I think now we're seeing why he is being signal boosted so much. because he works for the U.S. government in some capacity. Probably still would be my guess. While filming one such protest in Daqing, Jiang was arrested and detained for 2 days before he was deported from China. A friend claimed he was accused of making illegal video recordings and suspected of spying. No charges were filed. 2003, he was allowed by Chinese officials to return, where he decided to abandon freelance journalism and pursue public education instead. So that's basically what he's been doing. As it says at the bottom, the article goes on. I think we've gotten the overview here. He has held senior administrative and teaching positions at prominent Chinese secondary schools. But going back to that thing I thought was key before, he failed to publish his own book or get articles published in magazines. And let me tell you, if his work on YouTube is any indication, you will see very readily why he failed to write his own book or to get published in any kind of scholarly publication. Because it's shit. Because it's absolute fucking garbage. That's my personal opinion. All right. So what else do we have here? Oh, yeah. He also... Oh, fuck. I cut off the... I cut off the first one. There's also here, he wrote about Chinese media censorship leading to tyranny for CNN. This is a CNN article. I unfortunately cut off the first screenshot accidentally. But yeah, he wrote this for CNN. I can count myself lucky that when the Chinese secret police arrested me for reporting on worker strikes and branded me a spy, all they did was deport me. It was June 3rd, 2002, and I was filming a worker protest undercover for PBS. As I interviewed a laid-off worker, I was jumped by thugs, thrown into a van, driven to a black spot, held incommunicado for 48 hours. Here's what the Chinese secret police told me. I was reporting in China illegally to stir anti-China sentiment and deserved to be imprisoned for 20 years. Then they put me on a motorcade to the airport. And anyway, this is the guy. He writes for CNN, and who knows what his other connections are. Okay, I'm just kind of getting the video set right now. I did speed this up so that it would be a little bit easier for us to watch, because he talks kind of slowly and it is a long video, like I said. But yeah, let's go ahead and start this video. Again, the title of the original video is Game Theory Number 8, Communist Spectre, by Professor in air quotes, Jiang Xueqin.
Today we discuss communism, Marxism, where we'll discuss what it is, where did it come from, and why did it succeed. Now, the 20th century had the Cold War, and so that was an ideological struggle between capitalism and communism. And for the longest time, we believed that capitalism and communism were polar opposites, a dialectic, okay? A black and white. But if that is the case, then how do we explain China?
What do you mean, how do we explain China? Now, he's going to get into what he means by that, but he's louder than you, but it's fine. All right, let me, I'll turn him down slightly. Okay. I don't want him louder than me. Who wants that? Yeah, and that is another. Today we're going to talk about Marxism and where it comes from. Then he starts talking about the Cold War. Good old idealist dialectics. Dialectic is when polar opposite. Yeah, so already he is giving a very misleading concept of what we're even talking about here with thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. What's up with his handwriting? I think the handwriting is the least of it, to be quite honest. But already we're off to a really shaky start with the dialectic. However, I'm going to pass over that because, yeah, first of all, this came from 100 years before the Cold War started. Came out directly out of the contradictions of capitalism itself, but, you know, don't let a small detail, minor detail like that bother you. I believe he ends up saying here that capitalism and communism are enemies of socialism. Yeah, that's exactly. Didn't this grifter go on Jimmy Dore? He sure did. I don't watch Jimmy Dore, but somebody shared a clip that I saw. Let's keep playing. I can see everybody's already enjoying this. And I have this on 1.5 speed, at least for like the first half of it. Then we'll decide if we want to keep watching it at regular speed.
Because for the longest time, China was a communist country, and then in the 1980s, it started to reform, and now China is very much a capitalist country.
Okay, whoa. I think there's a lot of people who would dispute that. I know because like probably half of the audience would dispute that comment. I can see like steam coming out of some ears already. Even I wouldn't say that it's fully, I mean, it's not like the US of just full neoliberalism. Um, there are some vestiges of socialism hanging on in that country. However, they opened the door to a capitalist overhaul of the country in the late 70s, early 80s, joined the WTO in 2001. And but he just sums it up as like China's a capitalist country now. But you're actually, before we say anything else, it gets even better. Let's continue.
In fact, if you think about it, this transition has been seamless.
Okay, what? So you know what? Like I said, you all are gonna help. I'm gonna give the chat a moment, and we can go out of slow mode here. I want to let the chat lead on this one. Yeah, seamless. The fuck. So no, actually, there was a lot of struggle against Dungism. Seamless equals more worker exploitation. Yes, his family left China when he was 6 and moved to Canada. My glorious, my glorious seamless Deng Xiaoping. I am losing brain cells. Seamless is when you forcibly break up communes. China's a communist country, which makes it a capitalist country because capitalism is communist, which makes it capitalist. He has no clue what dialectics are, has not read Hegel. Okay, this is a fun video. Let's continue.
There hasn't been much conflict because of this transition. And this is not true historically, where transitions have been very violent. Okay, so think of the transition from feudalism to capitalism. Okay, that was a very violent process.
Actually, the funny thing here is he's going to hand wave that later. Like, okay, there was feudalism, then there was capitalism, and capitalism needed a lot of workers, so it like made a lot of workers. Oh, interesting. So you're saying that wasn't a violent process of dispossessing peasants? Basically, how did they get all the workers that the capitalists needed to go work in these horrendous conditions in the factories? I mean, not that like working on a farm is great conditions, but it's better than working like a windowless factory, like 12 hours, 16 hours, 18 hours in the dark. Like, read Capital. Have you read Capital? Marx describes the conditions pretty well as the process of how the peasants were kicked off the land, making them unable to provide a living for themselves. And that's how they became proletarians, because proletarians have nothing but labor power to sell in a world that is entirely, it's a social order that is entirely based on the exchange of commodities. The only commodity that proletarians have is labor power. Well, so that was actually a very violent process. It's described in volume 1 of Capital. Dungists are in shambles from this one. They will not recover. Dialectics resolve seamlessly, as we all know. The decollectivization of the communes were, quote, seamless. The transition was as seamless as Elon Musk's hair transplant. Primitive accumulation was actually so fun, you guys, for real. Reading Anti-Düring right now, and people still make arguments just like Düring. These motherfuckers simplify history to the point of complete and utter distortion, have no material analysis, and gloss over very important events and conditions. This is precisely because they operate in an idealist framework that thinks of communism as an idea in a marketplace that just does stuff on its own. The LARP never stops. All right, let's continue.
Think of the process from Catholic Europe into Protestant Europe. That was also a very violent process. But in China, communism transitioned into capitalism pretty easily.
Is anybody who knows about Chinese history able to weigh in on the transition from Maoist China to Dengist China?
Quickly and extremely successfully. Okay? And in fact, you could say that today, China is very much a capitalist country with some communist elements, but it's very much capitalistic. So the question then is, if these two ideologies, capitalism and communism, are such polar opposites, if it's a dialectic, then how does this happen in China? And what I want to show you today is that actually this is a false dialectic, okay? Meaning that communism and capitalism are actually more similar than they are different.
And that's where this is going to really go off the rails. Anti-Düring is the original content nuke. The fact that both liberals and conservatives are parading this guy around shows that they fundamentally adhere to the same idiotic, shallow understanding of history. Bro is just saying shit. Famously seamless transition. Nobody ever talks about it ever. Capitalism equals communism. Truth nuke. Japanese imperialism and the Chinese Revolution was a fucking walk in the park, I guess. This is insane so far. We're literally... How far into this are we? A minute and a half. Reform and opening up was capitalist reforms, yeah. It's almost like the Cultural Revolution never happened, according to this dude. Never has this must be this must go hard if you're stupid applied so much. Cannot wait to learn how he defines communism. You're looking for definitions? Good luck. Never even commented before, but holy shit, straight yap. Yeah. Is this guy the author of 1984? Dialectic is when you talk about two things. Is this guy actually popular? Look up his name. Jiang space Xueqin. Look him up on YouTube. You will be hit with so much stuff. Actually, just even look him up in a search engine. You will be hit with he is all over the internet. I swear this guy is just digging into his imagination to make shit up as he goes along. Does he know what revisionism is? I don't think he concerns himself with such trifles. Yeah, these things never happened, but it was also very bad and we condemn it. Is this the why communism is the biggest scam in history video? I don't know if it's also posted under that title, but that's kind of the gist of it. I wonder how he handles students with questions. I'm not sure that he takes a lot of questions, actually. War is peace, communism is capitalism. He reminds me of the Ancient Aliens guy. We should be highly suspicious of anyone who's dogmatic about not reading leftist theory. Yeah. Even with my limited study of Chinese history, I know it certainly wasn't a seamless transition. Imagine being in the room when it was being recorded. Without Marx, everything sounds like baby talk. They both start with C and are therefore the same. Is a more studied position than whatever he's saying. This guy would have loved Trotsky. I've seen so many quote-unquote serious people recommend this guy. It's the absolute state of bourgeois commentary. And this is why they're going to lose, folks. Like, keep that in mind. This is why we say study, because how laughable this comes off to us. Someday in the near future, it's going to come off as this laughable to everyone else too. That's the point where we have a shot at taking power. This is the kind of crap that Duganites live and bleed for. Yeah, study diligently. I don't think he thinks very much at all. That's the problem. Does anyone actually take his classes, or is he talking to his imaginary friends? Capitalism is when the government does things. All right, let's continue.
In fact, what I will show you is that in many ways, communism is a creation of capitalism.
No. I mean, communism is a see, now I'm mixing them up. Communism is a creation of the contradictions within capitalism, you could say, or a response to the contradictions. In other words, capitalism creates this gigantic working class which has no interest in private property around which the system is based. Then, obviously, at some point, that other huge class of people that wants to see the system taken down is going to organize to accomplish that. So, I mean, that's the extent, though, to which we would consider it a sort of creation of the system. It's not. It's something that arises from the contradictions inherent to capitalism. But capitalists do not just sit down, take out a sheet of paper and conspire to, quote, create communism. That would be complete. And if you understood anything about their interest in private property, which communism destroys, then you would understand that immediately, and you would not listen to another word this guy says, because it'd be complete nonsense, and you would see why that's complete nonsense. There's nothing for capitalists in communism. Why do you think they spent billions of dollars on propaganda against communism in the advanced capitalist countries? And even not in the advanced capitalist countries then, put that propaganda all over the world. Why do you think that they spent so much on the military buildup and everything else against communism if it was their own creation? That doesn't make any sense. And if you're going to make a claim like that, you should at least be able to answer a question like that right off the bat. There's a video where he introduces one of his classes. It's like 5 Chinese teenagers. He's poisoning the minds of children. And I understand with the Chinese government support, why is China allowing this? Dungus, please respond. I would love to hear what this crackpot has to say about the transition from bourgeois pseudo-democracy to overt fascist dictatorship. We may get there. He talks about democracy in the video, actually. Absolutely. Professor, how do we know when to discard context versus when to... How do we know when to discard context versus when to invent our own history? Gulag for Jiang. We're not even a minute or two in. I think in one of his videos, he has someone ask him if he's brainwashing them with his lectures, and his response was roughly, well, school is indoctrination, so you tell me. Well, they can't tell you, genius, because they're kids. They don't know anything yet. That's the whole point. They're vulnerable. Heard of that concept? Anyway. This guy works as a history and philosophy teacher at a Beijing high school. He has a fucking degree in English lit. Spreading this confusion to the Chinese youth, terrible. He's like Ben Carson, maybe good at something, but not good at anything else. Want a good Ben Carson highlight? Look up Oh My Luggage. That will give you a good insight into what's going on in Ben Carson's mind. Shakespeare, welcome Shakespeare. Professor Jiang is not a comrade. I'm starting to get that feeling. I've never heard a clearer condemnation of the Canadian education system. I would also go with the anti-communist diaspora. Very clear condemnation as well. Vibe coding, vibe communism, vibe capitalism. KK Canada. One of those rants your divorced high school shop teachers went off on. Oh boy. As a Quebecois, my CEGEP college philosophy professors were definitely idealists, but were 100% more competent than whatever this is. We are just warming up. Oh, I just figured out his worldview. Dialectical solipsism. Got him. I thought he died, honestly. Is this the more boring version of the Mandela effect? This guy probably cried when he read Animal Farm. I think I saw Jiang on Kim Ivermectinson's show. Absolutely right. He made an appearance, Mrs. Left.com herself. Continuing.
As a weapon to destroy capitalism's major enemies, okay?
So this is kind of like the main plank of his argument, is that communism was a weapon of capitalism used to destroy the enemies of capitalism. We will see in the next couple of minutes how that doesn't hold up for just even half a second by his own explanation.
So communism is not really the enemy of capitalism. The real enemies of capitalism are different ideologies, okay? So these
different ideologies. He's going to list them now.
Ideologies include monarchy. The idea of monarchy is that rather than power in the hands of the capitalist, power is in the hand of the king, okay? And what a king often does is redistribute capital in a way that is more fair.
That is absolutely not true. Maybe it happened more in the ancient world. That is not a feature of, again, looking at the context of modern European history where capitalism arose. That is absolutely not true whatsoever. Also, there are constitutional monarchies now where, and that's like, he's going to list monarchy and religion and nationalism and something else I forget. All of these things are still around in capitalist countries. Like, what are you talking about? They're instrumental to capitalist rule. In the case of monarchy, they've at least kept them around as kind of an anchor, or they made deals with the old feudal elites rather than continuing the struggle, because that could go in an unpredictable direction, even emboldening workers to overthrow capitalism or something like that. There are other cases like the French Revolution or the U.S., whatever happened here, some people consider it a counter-revolution, or, you know, what is commonly called the U.S. Revolution, 1776 and all that. No monarchy, you know. So some of the capitalist revolutions abolished monarchy. Some of them kept monarchy around, but it has not stopped capitalism. So this is like kind of a really weird argument off the bat if you know anything about history. And maybe if you're talking to 13-year-olds, they wouldn't know some of this. Let's continue.
So for example, when a king first comes into power, what a king often does is cancel all debts.
No, that is not often or frequent or, you know, again, maybe in the ancient world sometime, not a common feature of the world out of which capitalism and communism started to emerge. That is not, let's take a ridiculous argument. I don't even know how he came up with that.
And redistribute the land. And that's why.
Yeah, kings famously redistributing the land. Let me catch up with the comments. Jiang hurts my brain so much. My Radlib friend loves him. I hate it. I remember they were going to put up a victims of communism thing, some kind of memorial or plaque in Ottawa, but all the names were straight up Nazis, so they decided to leave it nameless. Yeah, important detail. In the Soviet Union, 1984 was taught, but it was taught as talking about the capitalist world. There you go. Owned. It's actually so gross thinking about the vulnerable kids that sat listening to this shit. This guy fucking sucks. Always avoided his videos and people's reactions till now. Not trying to get rage baited. Monarchy against capitalism. Wait till this guy learns about the UK. I know, like, where is he getting? Fucking Canada. is subject to the monarchy. Canada, the country where he grew up, is subject to a monarchy. This guy reminds me of the time I went to the R Monarchy subreddit. My condolences. He took like a snapshot of 4th grade education about France in the 19th or 20th century. That guides his thinking. This is the enlightened centrist. It's the dungest method. Use capitalist systems and mechanisms to destroy capitalism. It gets worse. So this guy is a monarchist. No, he's a capitalist, and monarchy is the enemy of capitalism. I think actually the conclusion of this video, I think, ends up being that like social democracy is the real enemy of capitalism, and that communism was there to discredit social democracy. No, social democracy discredited itself. Read some of Lenin's writings about the Second International. Incredible. Take one look at an American megachurch, same thing, and it becomes plain how religion is adapted to serve the ruling class of capital. No. Wait till we get to the religion part. This is Civ 5 theory. You have to pick between communism, monarchy, or capitalism. No, there could never be parts and remnants of the old contradiction in the new contradiction. I love being a mechanist. Saudi Arabia is the big contemporary enemy of capitalism, according to Jiang. That literally, I think half of my brain just slid out my ear reading that comment. He calls it game theory. So yeah, Civ 5, where he got it from. I'm a historian, and even though Eastern Europe is not my area of expertise, I still feel he is very wrong. Just a gut feeling, LOL. Yeah, absolutely. This guy lies like Trump. He just makes up stories in his head and states, wait till you get to his biography of Marx. Holy fuck. It's like every statement, you just hit like a major stop sign. States them as reality, as though he has the device from Black Mirror that allows him to make reality as he dictates. His analysis is based on Canadian primary social studies education and, most importantly, vibes. Yeah, because he was an English lit major in college. And so he doesn't, like, his high school is where that stops for him. I'm looking at the former head of the history department at the University of Haifa in Israel. All right, let us continue.
He's so popular, okay? So capitalists are afraid of kings. They don't like kings.
What? Just, that's not why. It's because they wanted to they were the money power, and they needed to break up the old social order where property was decided by feudal titles and, nobility and things like that. They needed to break all of that up so that everything was freely tradable, because they owned the money, so they would benefit from that. So that's why they fought the feudal nobility. And yeah, they made some deals with the feudal nobility. In some countries, they kept them around partly as an anchor against socialist revolution. The capitalist class anchored themselves in some of the outgoing reaction that they could use as sort of attack dogs, or just, to prevent too much social progress here. But no, that is just not, because the kings were progressive. What are you talking about? If we're talking about the Russian Revolution and the Tsar, this was definitely not a progressive situation. I defy this guy to name a single example in modern Europe, or really anything modern whatsoever, where the king is doing redistribution. And what are you talking about?
Because the king will often redistribute property. Another great enemy.
Often. Well, then it shouldn't be too hard to cite some examples, huh? What's that? Crickets? No examples? Yeah, just keep flying through your gobbledygook.
Of capitalism is religion or theocracy.
Okay, religion and theocracy are not the same thing. Theocracy is when the religious authorities directly rule society. Religion is, that's different. You can have religion without it being like the dominant ruling force or directly being the government. I don't know what this is. So when I said before that this is like after everyone is done feeding at the conspiracy slop trough, Jiang's material is if you scrape what's left and then amass it into a ball. His is the leftovers at the conspiracy slop trough. This is just absolutely, if there was something below shit tier, he'd be in that tier.
Okay. The idea here is that all religions teach you that money is evil, right? God doesn't want you to make money. God wants you to be kind to others.
They kind of say that, but I mean, this got co-opted into official state ideology in like 300 AD. I think that they found a way to make religious doctrine and money and wealth and class society and inequality, reconciled somehow, to or at least to defang it to a point where it wasn't a serious threat to the social order. Not in this guy's world though.
To love your children.
There's something wrong with that in capitalism? Pretty sure the capitalists say that too. Anyway.
To be a nice person. Okay.
Okay, that is not a threat. Being a nice person is a threat to capitalism. Maybe in an abstract sense, but like they had to develop communism to make you not a nice person. The hell are you talking about?
So that's why in Catholic Europe, they were so poor, because people were more focused on redemption and salvation than they were on making money.
Yeah. The continent that would go on to develop capitalism, it had nothing to do with, not having the steam engine or the Industrial Revolution. Catholicism. That's why they were poor. And as we know, when Europe was Catholic, which I think a lot of Europe still is Catholic, but when Europe was Catholic, the entire rest of the world sending probes to beyond the solar system, really advanced, gold-plated everything, just like, what is he talking about? When Europe was poor, the entire rest of the world was poor too. And it wasn't because of Catholicism.
Okay? So theocracy is also a major enemy.
You gotta love okay. It's when people do they say something kind of stupid and then they're like, right? Afterward? No. That's just a really dishonest way of speaking. It's irked me since this became a thing, right? Since that became a thing, right? No, you're not giving the person you're talking to a chance to just listen and think about it themselves. You're just using like hypnotic suggestion almost on them. Right? Right? No, let me figure out if it's right or not. Okay? Okay? No, it's not okay. What you're saying is fucking crap.
Of capitalism. Then you also have nationalism.
Nationalism, famously incompatible with capitalism in every way. What are you talking about? I'm going to go back to the chat. Another great example of social democracy discrediting itself. Look at the history of the CCF in Canada and where it is now. A bunch of countries are still ruled under the British Crown: Canada, Australia, Caribbean islands, etc. Yeah, it's called the British Commonwealth. Apparently this guy, despite living in it, has never heard of it. Or he thinks that you were born yesterday and have never heard of it yourself. He thinks that the British monarchy is controlled by the Franciscans or something. I think someone showed Professor Dave or Flint Dibble, I don't know who, but he might not even have gone to Yale because apparently there are no records of him attending. I gotta look this up. Did Professor... Yes, he graduated with distinction. I'm going to put in controversy. All right. I'm not finding the claim that he didn't go to Yale, so if somebody has a link, let me know. Canada imported a lot of reactionaries during the rise of the Soviet Union and after World War II explicitly to combat socialist tendencies from within. Yeah, there's a book that we have on the channel I love called, oh God, I can't remember the name off the top of my head. It's like a bedtime story for proletarian youth or something like that. And it's basically that story of how, like, the more revolutions there were, all of the expelled reactionaries started congregating in places like the United States. It was like how the revolution came to the United States. That basically it cracked under the weight of all the expelled reactionaries taking over the country, and it just got so extreme that it just weighed it down to where it just fell apart. Guy forgot about the Protestant work ethic. Excellent point. The Protestant work ethic has underpinned the capitalist. I mean, that ideology that you have a calling, that you have to work hard to please God and all of that. Capitalists definitely incorporated that directly into fighting social change. So that's what I was saying about pretty sure that they have found ways to reconcile religion and co-opt it to support rather than combat or undermine the status quo. Professor, will this be on the test? I'm wondering what the test is, just going out in public saying some of this shit. Unfortunately, right now, you would pass the test of, God, I can't even go there. It's the reason I'm doing what I'm doing here, we have to overcome this stuff. Hassan does the same thing. It's like trying to make the other person connect the dots that you failed to connect. Saying the right? Yeah. It's like just suggesting to you that it's correct. And you're like, well, I can't actually connect the dots in that logic. And I think that there's gaps, but right. Oh, well, I must be wrong because they're saying right. They have confidence. No. Think about it. My favorite Tucker Carlson line. Think about it. Let that sink in. Listening to somebody bang pots against each other would be more useful than this idealist conspiracy slop. This guy doesn't realize that capitalism is a mode of production. We'll see. I don't know if he drops that term ever or not. Probably not. Jiang always goes back to the Jesuits or the Royal Landscapers of France or whatever group he can find. Yeah. Nothing shows capitalism in opposition to nationalism like going into Walmart prior to July 4th and seeing the entire place painted in American flags. Oh, wait. Is he writing out nationalism? Yeah. All right. Let's continue here.
Nationalism is the idea of loyalty to your people, loyalty to your nation. For capitalism, that's a problem.
No, it isn't. I mean, capitalists readily adopted the idea of, let's try that again. That's wrong in 20 different ways. I started speaking, my brain just stopped. No, it isn't. In fact, in Marxism, we understand the formation of the nation state and the national market to be very close processes. Actually, nations, which we have a Marxist definition of nation. If you look at Stalin's Marxism in the National Question or Marxism in the National and Colonial Questions, nations are a thing that exist. They're also in the process of capitalism making the modern nation state as we understand it today. A lot of the purpose of that for capitalists was in solidifying their class position was creating the market. Eventually, they fully developed that market and they had to keep expanding, which is where the different capitalist nation states started integrating with each other, investing in each other. This is the era of imperialism. And there starts being a lot more international integration of capital. However, they still keep the national boundaries to regulate labor and to keep labor divided along lines that capital is not as constrained along those national lines. So this is just total nonsense. Let's continue.
Okay, because capitalism wants to be loyal to capital. It wants capital to flow through across borders.
Yeah, but I mean, considering that they control the nation state, they're able to do that largely as they need to do. Sometimes they, and they use the national borders sometimes to restrict capital in some ways. But there's way fewer. It's way easier for capital to move across borders than it is for labor to move across borders and to stay there and to operate freely. So this is like utter nonsense what he's saying. It's hard almost to rebut because I don't even know who this would work on. You know what I mean? Like what he's saying is so obviously and basically false that, well, let's.
So I see an investment opportunity in China. I want to take my money from America and put it into China. I don't want to worry about, oh, China's my enemy. China is not my people. Okay? So nationalism is also a major problem.
Well, no, but when we talk about bourgeois nationalism or capitalist nationalism, what we're talking about is how the capitalists get the workers distracted from their status as a member of an international working class to focus more exclusively on like the bourgeois conception of nationalism. So, for instance, that workers will fight for the capitalists against other workers in other countries in capitalist wars. So, no, bourgeois nationalism is definitely a thing, not an enemy of capitalism. It's actually one of the more useful tools in its toolkit. Again, like literally, what are you talking about? It's hard to do a rebuttal against positions this weak because you're like, I feel like I'm strawmanning the guy. I feel like I'm concocting an artificially weak version of his argument in order to make attacking it easier. But that's actually just how weak his actual argument is.
And then you also have another problem, okay, called democracy.
No. I mean, capitalist democracy. So the Marxist understanding is that, okay, we live in a thing called class society. It's society divided by class divisions. What are classes? Classes are groups of people in the population who have different relationships to the means of production. What are the means of production? They are the technology, the workplaces, you could say, that are used to produce the goods and services that support material existence. So you need certain goods and certain services to live, and we work and produce those, and there are different groups in society that have different relationships. So like in capitalism, the capitalist class owns the means of production, and they have an entire state and police force and everything else set up to enforce their private property rights, their private ownership of the means of production. And if you try to just operate the means of production in a way that violates their permission, they'll send their cops after you. Workers do not own the means of production and can be hired and fired by capitalists and don't have really a say in that process. Unless they've organized labor unions, then you have contracts and things like that. But at the end of the day, the capitalists still own the means of production. So this is capitalist class rule, or what we also call the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, or the dictatorship of the capitalist class. Dictatorship in this sense, not meaning personal dictatorship like a dictator, but the class rule of the capitalists in general. They are the dominant class. They're the ruling class. They're the class that rules society and shapes it around its class interests. Its class interests, again, come from its class status or its relationship to the means of production. So everything really is about private property, and everything is made to serve private property and the needs of the capitalists for a large workforce, etc. The workers get educated only as much as the capitalists need, and so on. The idea of a socialist revolution is to initiate dictatorship of the proletariat, the dispossessed working class. And then from there, we have a transitional system where capitalism is suppressed by the worker-led state to build socialism, suppress capitalism, and eventually reach a point where capitalism has been phased out to where there are no class distinctions, everyone is a worker, private property, thing of the past, etc. We never made it to that point because the revolution only spread to about a third of the planet. Anarchists take note. They're like, oh, the state never withers away. Yeah, it's because imperialism was still the dominant force on the planet. Had there been more revolutions, you might have seen the state withering away as capitalism became less of a threat. The purpose of the dictatorship of the proletariat is a transitional stage to state-less communism. See, the state is a product of class society. It's the mechanism by which one class oppresses another. The workers need a state to oppress the capitalist class so that they can't have a resurgence and keep doing capitalism again. And it's only after capitalism has been globally extinguished that the dictatorship of the proletariat can wither away into just a managing of industry, but there's no more class distinctions. We've never made it to that point again because there were only revolutions in about a third of the countries of the world, and not even the most advanced countries. Okay, so that's why the state never withered away, in case an anarchist is listening to this, because class society still existed. A state is going to exist while class society exists. Anyway, what was this guy even talking about? Was democracy. So talking about the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie or bourgeois class rule, it can have different faces. When it is in its ascendant phase, when capitalism is a baby going up into middle age, there is more free competition because the winners and losers of capitalism haven't been decided yet. Okay, because it's early on. That's a free competition kind of thing. We tend to see in the political system that mirrored with more of a quote-unquote free competition, but within the constraints of capitalist society. So to a Marxist, capitalist democracy is real, but limited and biased toward capitalist class rule. It can't really oppose class rule, so it's always within that pen. That said, when even that democracy is too much for them, and especially in the imperialist era, which follows the ascendant era, this is where capitalism reaches its final stage. Lenin wrote a book on this called Imperialism, the Highest Stage of Capitalism. Capitalism eventually comes to a point where it's highly consolidated. The world is divided up between capitalists. They're just fighting over redivision. There is what we would call like the military-industrial complex, highly integrated systems. It's no longer just free competition between capitalists, but a capitalist, not totally monolithic, but a much more consolidated capitalist edifice appears that is ruling society. This is where you tend to get movements like fascism or something like that are less democratic, more tyrannical. But this is just another face of capitalist class rule. Which class is the ruling class hasn't changed in that case. Only their method of governing society, whether it's more democratic or less democratic, changes. But bourgeois democracy is absolutely not an enemy of capitalism. What are you talking about? Let's let him continue.
So believe it or not, capitalists hate democracy.
I mean, again, they keep it constrained, but there are, at certain points in history, as their needs dictate, they're perfectly fine with it at certain times in history.
Why do they hate democracy? Because if you think about it, if people had power, the workers had power, they would all get together and vote to redistribute wealth, right?
Well, let's let him just keep going.
To make the rich pay more taxes. We call this socialism.
Okay, so there we go. This is more or less what he likes, is quote unquote democracy. He means social democracy. He means that the workers wouldn't, try to just completely take power away from the capitalists. They would, for some reason, let the capitalists maintain domination over society, but tax them more using the very elections that the capitalists set up. This is his basic thesis, is that social democracy is like the thing that the capitalists hate most, and that communism was created to destroy social democracy, the idea of taxing the rich. So we're starting to get more of a window into what this guy's about.
Okay? So you think about it, the enemy of capitalism is not communism, it's these four other things. You actually think about it, okay?
Think about it. Think about it. He just keeps saying, think about it. Yeah, I am thinking about it. I think you're completely wrong. Capitalists set up democracies. Now, they would, like in the United States, restrict it to just property owners or something like that. Eventually, universal suffrage usually is a demand of socialists in the early stage of the fight, that we want to maximize the potential of bourgeois democracy. But as we get later into the 20th century, even by the 20s and 30s, capitalism has developed fascism, like an openly anti-democratic ideology where they're still doing capitalism, but they're not going to let workers have a say. This is a response to things like, well, the growing tide of revolution that was throughout Europe at that time, because they didn't, really want to give an inch. However, they relented after World War II, and they're finding new methods of administrating and governing capitalist society while not doing, the kind of open assaults like we see in the United States now, where it's just kind of a joke, as far as like the idea of the common person having much control over society under the existing system. Anyway, I'm going to turn to chat. This guy is so exhausting to reply to, but let's see what the chat has to say. This is why I said, help me out here, chat. You're going to have to lead this reply here today. There are no quotations or sources given in his fake classes. At least in economic class in college, they base their lies on something. We're moving fast in this class. I hope you take quick notes, huh? Yeah. No, you just have to think about it. Think about it. Oh, so the thing is, I guess Jiang is not noted in the alumni catalog. Interesting. This guy is the manifestation of what Lenin talks about in the bourgeois intelligentsia's methods of struggle against the workers. Available on the channel. A lot of the people I've met thought they were potential principled Marxist-Leninists, but desperately need a new party. You're an optimist and try to see that in everybody. I think a lot of people would be down with this. There's a lot of anti-communist propaganda out there. And then also just like this guy, just filling people's heads with total nonsense. And then people who aren't as aware of how capitalists will just promote misinformation specifically to confuse people, they look at this guy being so heavily promoted and they say to themselves, well, there must be something to this, even if it doesn't make sense to me. And so it gets people to doubt themselves if people aren't really confident in the knowledge. That's why, again, I say read as much as you can directly, because you will know what this guy is saying is total nonsense, like inside of 5 minutes. Capitalists want the proletariat to be loyal to their nation, quote, their people rather than their class. So yes, nationalism and capitalism are very interconnected with each other. Yeah. In other words, Uncle Sam doesn't need you, actually. Have a nice day. Capitalists famously have a problem with taking surplus value through ownership of their property. This is giving the whole U.S. is not a nation state, it is a civilization state vibes. There's a saying for that. This is not right. This is not even wrong. Yeah, even to be wrong, it would need to be more coherent. This line of argumentation only works for people who are looking to have their preconceived biases affirmed. Yeah, they're not looking to be convinced. They just need to justify their fear of communism. The whole thing, absolute. And that's when we were talking before about all the Walbert conspiracy slop against, do you know actually that like no mass movement has ever been real? Sounds like you're just afraid of mass movements, actually, So yeah, I think that's definitely it. I mean, that's why it works, because the anti-communist propaganda is out there. People have been taught to be afraid of communism. That fear becomes dominant, and then everything is just kind of like irrational after that. In other words, they don't need the fuel for that to be rational. It's just kind of like guided by fear. It's not really guided by like an understanding of what the hell they're talking about. Because you can look at the outcomes of communism and oppose it for one reason or another, That's different from there being a blind fear of it. And a lot of that Lawbert conspiracy stuff is like the blind terror of communism, but they can't even quite tell you what it is or why they're afraid of it. Why do guys like this write random words on the board? It adds nothing. He's got to do something. This guy is unreal. I'm speechless. The 30 Years' War was European monarchies overthrowing feudalism in order to begin establishing private property and national markets to create the conditions for capitalism to arise. Monarchy and capitalism aren't fundamentally opposed to each other. Actually, is that even his point? I don't know anymore. I will say that Jiang ideology is way more in line with Xi Jinping than most other things. Did I hear that right? The enemy of capitalism is not communism. How about everything that isn't capitalism is the enemy of capitalism? Yes, you heard right. That is what this guy is saying. That capitalism and communism are friends. Actually, communism was created by capitalism to defeat monarchy, theocracy, nationalism, and democracy. Even though by the time that communism came around, monarchy was more or less already subdued. Like, none of this makes sense. So yeah, in summary, communism isn't the biggest enemy of capitalism. It's these four other things that capitalism continuously works together with. Think about it, right? Okay? Oh, this guy has quite literally said there's no evidence that the Holocaust happened? Let's look that up. He has been labeled a Holocaust denier by at least one outlet. All right, 3 days ago. So I'm looking at a rudevulture.com article for what it's worth. Viral Professor Jiang claims he never called himself a professor, despite many times he publicly introduced himself. YouTube personality Professor Jiang recently appeared in an interview where he was challenged over his use of the title professor despite working as a teacher, not a professor. Interview, yeah. So I mean, Mehdi Hassan did that, and then he was like, well, in my defense, some people call themselves a god, and Hassan was like, Mehdi Hassan, not Hassan Piker, was like, yeah, I mean, there's like Charlemagne the god, but I don't think anyone actually believes he's a god, whereas people do actually believe you're a professor, wrongly. Anyway, he's like, yeah, I never said that. It's the internet that calls me that. All right, where's the Holocaust thing? That's why I clicked on this. Control F time. Holocaust. The rest of Jiang's theories follow a similar pattern. He has argued that the Egyptian pyramids served as energy. So he's really going for the across the board, just check every box thing of like, let's weigh in on the pyramids. He has argued that the Egyptian pyramids served as energy storage devices rather than burial monuments, that evolution is not credible. Evolution is not credible. This is it. He's like the Chinese, and Canadian tie-in, Alan Watt. Anybody remember Cutting Through the Matrix.com, Alan Watt? He's like the Chinese Canadian Alan Watt. He kind of just covers it all here. Evolution is not credible. So we got some creationism. Ancient priests used ritualistic trauma and dissociation to control pharaohs. I mean, maybe, but like that's so tangential to anything. Again, Holocaust, though. He has also promoted anti-Semitic theories about covert organizations and global powers, publicly questioned the Holocaust, stating, quote, "We don't actually have any concrete evidence for the Holocaust." So that is totally, totally, totally false. Here's what I'm trying to say. The rest of what he's saying about communism being like a friend and weapon of capitalism is as false as that statement. Okay, that's what I'm. And if you don't have the background to understand that, stick around because we're going to continue to be fleshing that out. So he's just a garden variety fascist doing what fascists do best and hopping on whatever trend is most popular at a given time. Professor Jiang has a video where he unironically wrote on a table Pax Judaica. I was watching another streamer react to him. How long is this guy going to last? Let's go to Polymarket. How long before this guy goes down in flames? There are a few historical occurrences, events, actions of which we have more evidence for than for the Holocaust. People to this day find more evidence in the form of uncovered mass graves, etc. Yeah, that is like such a profoundly untrue statement that there's no evidence for it. It's like one of the best supported things in history. Mein Kampf is a Truth Social post from 95 years ago. I endorse that statement. I remember when Mehdi Hassan alluded to this idiot being some Chinese spy. Oh, Mehdi Hassan, man, he comes so close sometimes. You got the spy part right. Not sure. I don't know. Is this what China's cooking up? Is this what the Xi Jinping thought social democrats are about to unleash, like at global scale? This is what they're brewing up in the underground CCP propaganda labs? Jiang has a video on the Russian Revolution where he gives Richard Spencer as a source. So yeah, he's a fascist. That's the Nazi who got punched. Where he's like, you know, hail President Trump and all that shit in 2017. Then some guy came up and like knocked him out randomly on the sidewalk, and then he like stopped doing speaking engagements after that. So he's just a fascist. Okay, that really clarifies things. So does Jiang just view the French as the mortal enemy of capitalism, since he's essentially just listed things that happened or threatened to happen during the French Revolution? I think you're using an unfair amount of detail. Jiang also frequently cites Alexander Dugin. Let's look that one up. Talk about nightmare blunt rotation. Rival theories of multipolarity. Alexander Dugin. Oh no, this is Jiang Shigong. Dugin essentially confirms that Professor Jiang Xueqin is the Chinese Communist Party's version of him. So he naturally had his big debut on the Tucker Carlson network. China has already unleashed its latest psychological weapon, Professor Jiang Xueqin. Boy, is this a rabbit hole I really don't want to go down. After Cromwell killed the king, the British monarchy had to concede to mercantilism and capitalism. He even had a chance to make the first constitutional nation state without a king, but he didn't. I would love to see Jiang just do one of those things where it's like 20 communists against this guy. It would go roughly like the Jordan Peterson one, I believe. Like, just actually pin him down and make him answer questions. Would so enjoy that. I think by now you've seen Russia Today and Kremlin promote people like Don Corder, Caleb Maupin, Jiang, and others for pure chaos. I don't know. I don't know really what Russia's up to at this point. Russia, to me, it's obviously like a large player and a large economy. They seem so fucking incoherent. Like, when your A team is like Dugin and Maupin and people like that, like, are they really thinking that they're sending their best? I don't really get what the play is there. Russia seems to be absolutely flailing as far as like the influence strategy. They're definitely, it seems like a quantity over quality approach. They do have a lot of people out there pushing a similar kind of line, but it's like a very much not coherent one. So yeah, I don't know if they're going for chaos, but that definitely seems to be kind of the result. Let's continue the Jiang video.
You actually think about it, okay? Communism is working capitalism to destroy all four of these things, right? So let's look at this. Monarchy, okay? Communism does not allow for monarchs to arise. It allows for a party to arise, right? What is a party? Party is an oligarchy, all right, which is a capitalist system.
No. No, it is not a capitalist system. Oligarchy is ruled by a few. That's what oligarchy means. It is class neutral. Beyond that, it is ruled by a few. Please support your claim that that is a capitalist system. That's a direct quote. That's a capitalist system, he just said. Support that fucking claim. No, we're just going to keep moving a mile a minute here. Beyond that, why support claims? Just say shit. Just say shit. Don't support anything you're saying.
Now, theocracy. What does Marx say? Marx says is that religion is the opiate of the people. Religion is the great evil of the world. Religion creates false...
Marx did not say that religion is the evil of the world. The class society is the evil of the world. Exploitation and oppression are the evil. Religion is a sense of false hope. It is the sigh of the oppressed. But it is false consciousness. It's not like a real solution. Religious salvation is not a solution to the problem of class society. That's what Marx said. And so communists are, I mean, like an actual, communist revolutionary involved in a party. These are people who are materialists who apply dialectical and historical materialism to develop strategy and tactics for advancing proletarian revolution. And we need to be free of idealist nonsense and ideas of religious salvation and all of that stuff to do that. When we take power in society, we defund religion, making religion a purely private or purely personal private matter. If you want to do that, you do that, but then also build up society toward material answers to problems, secular solutions, and again, phase out all kinds of idealist nonsense, including religion. And there may be times where there need to be more active interventions by the party against religion because religion will try to preserve itself, and it'll stage little uprisings and counter revolutions, and it'll be part of the aspirational counter revolutionary forces, because it wants to preserve itself, as the people are encouraged to move on from it, and it is defunded, and it wants to, wants to be empowered again. There's people with vested interests in that. But yeah, Marx didn't say that religion was just like the source of evil. Marx identified it more as like a false hope that prevents you from reaching the conclusion that you need to do a revolution against everything, including religion, which is part and parcel of the divided class society, which is the source of your exploitation and oppression. Let's continue with Professor Jiang.
Consciousness, therefore we must destroy all religion, right? And if religion is destroyed, what is left? The only thing that is left is money.
What does communism say about money? Communism good with money? Communism wants to, according to this fucking tool, destroy religion, which again, he's equating with theocracy. Those are different things. Communism wants to destroy religion to make way for money. Are you serious? What does communism say about money? I think people, even who haven't studied communism, probably know this one. Back to the chat. I need help here. I need help. SOS. Every point this guy is making can be responded to with no. Communism is pro-oligarchy? 3 question marks. Dude is just saying shit. Party is oligarchy. PhD is in Yaponomics. Marx spinning in his grave right now, about to come flying out, breaking the sound barrier just to take this guy down. Marx's skeleton flying out supersonic speeds, flying halfway across the world. You'll see a Jiang live stream where he's like, right, okay, and just this fucking, like, you hear this crash, and there's like a white streak of like Marx's skeleton just taking him out. Difficult to watch at best. If you count the entirety of a country's proletariat as a few people, then dictatorship of the proletariat would be oligarchy. Making up fake Marx quotes is still the meta on the internet, I guess. He just adds another word on the board to keep us on our toes. He's going to ask, and who is the bus driver at the end of this? Monarchs of the world unite. They have nothing to lose but their oligarchs. This is fun, huh? Everyone knows communists love money. This guy makes tick history look coherent. Communism is when the more money there is, the more communister it is. Hence the U.S. is communist, and we need to get rid of the Federal Reserve. Give this man a presidential nomination right now. We have no idea what he's saying. He's just saying shit, trying to sound smart. We have literally barely gotten into this video. Barely. I'm going to be going all night at this rate. Is religion opposed to money? False premise after false premise, hard to keep track. Jiang has successfully rotted my prefrontal cortex. I'm a Jiangist now. Communism being a society where humans become masters of themselves and knowledgeable of the laws of necessity that bound them implies the death of religion in communism. Yeah, religion is all about exploiting that uncertainty about how things work. Absolutely. I love that Jiang is presenting this like a Khan Academy tutor, trying not to look like the deranged conspiracy Charlie Day meme that he is. All right, here we go.
Okay? Now, nationalism. Communism is international, right? Workers of the world unite. So nationalism is also bad. We want to unite as a world. All workers unite. The class consciousness is more important than national identity.
Which is, what's he saying? That's just like in capitalism. Capitalism tells you the opposite because the imperialist powers need workers to fight each other. Like, what is your point? He's like, I mean, what he said is true, that yes, we should tune into class consciousness and not be divided by petty nationalism, that the capitalists are going to exploit and use to get us to fight each other. But how does that relate back to his point that therefore it's good for capitalism? Like, make that case. Support that idea.
Right? Now, democracy.
All right, we're just moving on. Okay, he's not going to support that at all. So yeah, communism is internationalist. It's proletarian internationalist. Note we have the class status in there as well. It's not just purely internationalist. It's proletarian internationalist specifically. So international solidarity among the working class. How the fuck does that help capitalism? Okay, we're just going to move on to democracy.
No. This is bad too, right? Because workers cannot defend their rights. Workers have false consciousness. Workers have been brainwashed by the capitalists in school, in the media, by the internet, by Hollywood, okay? Therefore, a vanguard, the party, must lead the people into socialism.
How does that support capitalism? And note that, again, he wrote democracy parentheses socialism. Chat, is democracy always socialism? I mean, the Marxist position is that the dictatorship of the proletariat, the class rule of the proletariat, when the proletariat overthrows the capitalist order and builds a new order, it is less democratic for some portions of the population, like the exploiting classes, the outgoing capitalists. It's less democratic for them, but more democratic for workers. So democracy is not like a neutral term. Lenin, in fact, mocked Kautsky at length and others following in the Kautskyist vein in the World War I era for promoting this idea of like a class-neutral democracy or democracy above class, which is how they're promoting the Weimar Republic idea. So no, democracy necessarily has a class character constrained by whatever ruling class is in charge. Everything's going to be skewed to supporting the rule of that class. So again, how does this help capitalism? Like what he said is kind of true, but like, what does it have to do with capitalism?
All right? So this is really convenient how capitalism and communism have similar enemies, and communism helps destroy all four enemies in a way that capitalism cannot.
If you wrote this down and handed it in for like a Soc 101 course, you would get an F. You would get a D- if the teacher was very, very charitable. He did not support that at all. So when we talk about critical thinking, here's what we're talking about. People make claims. Those are statements of, they're assertions of some kind. Claims have to be supported by good quality reasoning and good quality evidence. So when we're evaluating claims made, this is the basis of critical thinking. You're evaluating the quality of the reasoning used and the quality of the evidence cited. This is Swiss cheese. What he just said does not logically follow at all. He contradicted himself completely. And he has cited absolutely no evidence for any of it. None. All right.
Right? So you could also make the argument that maybe
you can make, again, you can say anything. You can make any claim. The question is it supported by quality reasoning and evidence? What do you think about this guy's reasoning and evidence? I think very poorly of it. I do not think highly of his reasoning and evidence.
Communism was a weapon or a virus created by capitalism.
Okay, whoa. So now we're getting into, it's not just that communism inadvertently played into the needs of capitalism, which it absolutely did not do. Now we're making a more direct claim. Capitalism created communism to accomplish these goals. Capitalism didn't just wait around for something like, it created it like a weapon or virus, and that's a quote. You got some support for that, man?
In order to conquer the world, in order to destroy the world so that capitalism can spread throughout the world. And China is an example of this, right? Think about the Cultural Revolution that destroyed religion, that destroyed tradition, that destroyed cultural identity. And what happened after the Cultural Revolution? China became capitalist, and it became hyper-capitalistic. China had the fastest economic growth rate in the world.
All right, I had to pause it there. This comment, what would this guy's study guide look like? Yeah, probably Mein Kampf. If you say one correct thing out of 100, people will point to it as a sign of your genius, I guess. Yeah. Yes, this guy, yeah, we discussed at length. This guy's not even a professor. Dissecting this whole thing would take days. I'm up for it, man. I'm up for it. Is he going to make some false equivalence between international communism and imperialism? Nope, not even that. Just end of sentence. Like I said before, the Lawberts will be like, well, capitalism in the 20th century became very consolidated. Communism is also very consolidated. Therefore, capitalists like communism. This guy's just he's not even taking it to that level. This is becoming more and more unhinged. We're literally only a few minutes into it. This guy thinks that social democracy is somehow not capitalism. Yes, although he hasn't really explained that so far, other than like, I guess taxing the rich is bad or something. Democracy is not socialism, but socialism is democracy for proletarians, yeah. I would understand if Jiangism caused you to overstim and just end the stream without notice. No, I'm loving this. I live for this. This is so good. Just inject it directly into my body. This guy would get a grade Z. Yeah, I mean, I would be, if I was teaching this guy, I would submit like an expulsion request, at least a suspension. He's the dean of the Destiny School of making unbased claims. Or yeah, he's the dean of the Destiny School of making unsupported claims. Yeah, I mean, his claims are definitely not based either. But yeah, I eat woke mind virus every morning. I have a big glass of woke mind virus. That's how I start my day. I accidentally learned critical thinking from US where I used to get into so many arguments, but now I just ask for evidence and no one provides any, and I save time by walking away. People usually get mad when you ask for evidence. Yeah, that's because when you ask for evidence and then they consult their memory and they realize that they believed whatever claim they're making to you without any evidence, they realize they just wasted a lot of time. And instead of thanking you, they get mad at you. I mean, if anybody ever thanks you for that, cherish that person because they're a rare gem in this today's world. Jiang failed at journalism in school, so he became a conspiracy theorist. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were talking about that before, where he failed to get any papers published. I can see why. Do you see why he failed to get papers published in academia? This is like, again, if there's something below shit tier, I don't know what to call it, but it's where his stuff is. The bit on China's regression into capitalism is actually the truest thing he said, except that he said that it was like seamless and pure, free of violence or coercion or anything like that. Well, so, I mean, his argument about the Cultural Revolution tying into the restoration of capitalism in China is not far off from what some Hojists say. I disagree, though, wholeheartedly. So the thing there is that I think the Maoists went into the Cultural Revolution with the intent of it being guided by the party and, shaking up some of the bureaucracy and things like that. The Hojiist criticism I think Hoja did the thing of like, the Civil War was neither civil nor a war. It was like the great proletarian cultural revolution was neither great nor proletarian nor a cultural revolution or something like that. And the point was that it ended up, whatever the Maoist intent going into it ended up being very chaotic and somewhat destabilizing. We'll cover this more in the Maoism versus Hoja thing, but yeah. It's still a far cry in either case from what he's saying. He guessed that there'd be a war against Iran. Such a fucking genius. They've literally been saying that for 20 years. I mean, they were talking about that back under Bush Cheney. There was a thing, I think, in 2007. I don't know if you can even still find this on the internet, where a U.S. plane with, I think, like a nuclear missile on it got stolen. And it disappeared for like 24 hours. And people were thinking that this might be a false flag to try to start a war with Iran. Back then, this was 20 years ago. And so, yeah, they've been talking about it forever. Also, part of the reason that the John McCain campaign in 2008 for president sank was there was a clip that emerged of him. He was speaking at some like VFW hall or something. And he was asked about war on Iran. And he was like, well, I like that Beach Boys song, Bomberan, Bomberan, Bomberan. And that leaked. And people were like, no more war. Because they were really, the Bush Cheney years were huge on the jingoism. And people were kind of sick of it by that point. And they were just like, no. And people still believed that Obama was a progressive at that time. And I did not vote for Obama in 2008. But yeah, they've been talking about that forever. I can picture Jiang crashing out as his research director during his degree. What do you mean I have to cite sources? What do you mean I need a bibliography? It is really something. But this is where these fucking failures end up. In the anti-communist sludge. In the shit stream of anti-communism. And probably working for the fucking CIA too. Although who knows? Does this guy belong to China at this point? Is he one of their creations? Is this going to be like the Xi Jinping School of Social Fascism? It doesn't seem like it, I'll be honest, but who knows? Maybe they're finally succeeded in fusing Dugin and Xi thought together. Something like this guy is the result. Quote, the course of events showed that the great proletarian cultural revolution was neither a revolution nor great nor cultural, and in particular, not in the least proletarian. Yeah. It was a palace putsch on an all-China scale for the liquidation of a handful of reactionaries who had seized power. It's from Imperialism and the Revolution, Part 2, Chapter 3, Mao Zedong Thought and Anti-Marxist Theory. Really do look forward to reading that on the channel. Spiritually Dungist Academia. We are caught up. Back to the video.
China became capitalist. and it became hyper-capitalistic, trying to have the fastest growth rate, economic growth rate in the world. How did that happen? Okay, so I'm not saying this is true. I'm saying like this is something for us to think about. All right. All right.
He just said, "I'm not saying it's true." Why is anyone listening at this point? He just said, "I'm not saying." I'm still thinking about other stuff. I almost missed that one. I almost let that one slide by. He's like, "I'm not saying it's true." Well, why are you saying it? If it's not true, why are you saying it?
So let us now think about this. And again, this is all just speculation on my part. Okay, I don't really know. I'm saying like
Okay. What? What? You don't know? This is all just speculation. Nothing he has said is like would fall under the category of speculation. We're talking about areas of like, I don't know what to say. That's such a wild cop-out. History, political science, sociology. I mean, there's a number of disciplines that deal with topics like these. It's not just speculation. Although, which part is he saying is speculation? Because I guess there's a statement or two. Is he saying that the idea that capitalism created communism is speculation? He's not even specific or clear about what part of that was speculation. Is he trying to throw the entire thing into just, well, all of this is just speculation. So just, basically, I'm just dancing around here for your amusement. Don't take any of this seriously. What?
Why is this happening? Why is this the correlation? Right? All right. So an example is Karl Marx.
Oh, you're going to love this part. Anybody who knows anything about Marx is going to love this.
Karl Marx, of course, is the founder of communism. And the history of Karl Marx is like really, really strange. So, for example, he's a German citizen, but he spent all his time in Britain.
Not true. So Marx lived in Germany, France, Belgium, eventually did end up in Britain after getting kicked out of those countries. Why? For revolutionary activity. He then became a political exile in Britain, which was a special status, and he was surveilled there. He, was tracked by the police, by Scotland Yard, and he was monitored heavily. They did, because of the political exile status that they had, allow him to be there, whereas a lot of the other countries had kicked him out for being a Marxist, being a communist. But what this guy's about to get into will blow your mind for how fucking wrong it is.
He was exiled from Germany because he advocated for a world revolution. So he went to Britain. But Britain is also a capitalistic country. So why is it that he's allowed to do whatever he wants in Britain?
So one, he wasn't allowed to do whatever he wanted. Two, why was he allowed there? They had slightly different laws than Germany. Okay, not a big fucking mystery. We're not talking about the creation of the pyramids here. They had slightly different laws. That's the answer to your question. Move on.
He wrote most of his works in a British library, in the British Museum. So why did the British authorities allow him to do that?
Because that's what their legal system was. I mean, maybe you disagree with that, but that's what it was. And again, he was surveilled. They knew who he was. They disagreed with his politics. The laws at that time did not allow them to take stronger action against him.
Hey, that's a question for us, right?
Yeah, but that's a question you can answer. You don't just have to leave it as like mystery of the universe.
Britain is the most capitalist country in the world at this time, 19th century. And Britain basically allowed Marx to live there.
Yeah, maybe in part because they were afraid of, poking the bear, so to speak. Maybe they were afraid of backlash if they did kick him out. I don't know. But there's definitely answers to that question.
And do whatever he wants. Okay, that's true.
And again, not whatever he wants. He was under surveillance. But let's just keep saying do whatever he wants like that's true when it isn't.
Strange. Number two is Karl Marx. Where did he get his money from, okay?
Where did he get his money from? Anybody? This is you can look this up in 2 seconds online. He had income from being a journalist and from selling literature. However, he was very poor. His wife was from an aristocratic background and had to sell some of her more expensive belongings to fund them. They lived in very bad apartments in damp, terrible conditions. They had 7 children, only a few of whom lived to adulthood. The conditions were so bad. And he was supported financially by his partner Engels, who was from a wealthier family, but who disagreed with where the family got their money from. That's not like a crazy scenario. That's not really that hard to imagine. But he's about to say that Marx had a very comfortable life.
So Karl Marx, actually his wife is a German aristocrat. So she's used to luxury. But Karl Marx never made any money in his life, right? If he writes these works, the Communist Manifesto, that's capital, no one's going to read them. They don't.
Okay, so the Communist Manifesto sold about like 200,000 copies during Marx's lifetime, and also, was distributed in the underground as well. And something about socialist movements you may not know, there's a thing called mutual aid. Like, socialists do tend to support each other because they view the work as important. Thanks again to the patrons and Buy Me a Coffee supporters. This is definitely a thing. This is not like a huge head scratcher, actually, but let's continue.
Tell, right? So he's not a wealthy person, but we know for a fact that he actually lived a very good life.
What are you talking about? He did not live a comfortable life in any way.
Okay, he wasn't an aristocrat, he wasn't wealthy, but he was middle class.
No, he wasn't. That's just flatly wrong. That is just misinformation.
His kids went to private school.
No, they didn't. That is another lie.
They had a nice house in Britain.
Nope, wrong.
So the question is, where did he get his money from?
Well, we went through this already, but journalism, literature sales, and Engels. That's where he got his money from.
Well, what they say is he got his money from his partner, Friedrich Engels. And where did Friedrich Engels get his money from? Well, his father was a capitalist, an industrialist. So here's a question for you. Why would his father, who is a very wealthy person, give Engels a lot of money to give to Marx?
Because he was his son, and family duty. Like, you can read, actually, these aren't questions without answers. You can read about Engels' relationship with his father. Engels disliked that his father was a conservative authoritarian, and Engels was more socially conscious and questioned capitalism. But he was entitled to part of that family money, and his father did not cut him off over their political differences, which is, the father was not a radical and disapproved of Engels' revolutionary politics initially. From what I've read, Engels' father came to at least respect that Engels was respected within his field eventually, and may have softened somewhat. But he was a pretty hardline guy, but he didn't cut him off. Engels was his son, and he viewed him as entitled to that family money, which then Engels did give some of that to Marx to support him because he believed in the work. Does anything I just said sound like a fairy tale? That sounds very plausible to me. So this guy's acting like none of this exists, or like there has to be some conspiracy behind Marx because actually he was living this lavish lifestyle. That's fake. It's a lie. It's invented. He just totally made that up.
And Marx is calling for a world revolution to destroy the capitalists. Why would they do that? Okay, that's kind of strange.
No, not really, because Engels' father was not I guess the argument here is that Engels' father, not even the capitalist class of Germany as a whole, but Engels' father, this then proves that capitalism created communism because Engels' father didn't cut off Engels. Okay? Just it's so weak, it's so thin. It's amazing that this guy is not just laughed off of the global stage immediately, but that's again what having, I'll do some speculation here. My speculation is that he has intelligence community, quote unquote, backing here, because how the fuck else do you get up and say this shit that an elementary school history teacher could tell you is false? Honestly. He's just out here just spinning fascist conspiracy theories about communism. Anyway, it's factually wrong, and even logically it doesn't stand up that Engels' father was trying to engineer communism. No, he just didn't cut off his son. I guess that to you would be the sensible thing to do. I guess Engels' father was even less of a monster than you were, but whatever.
And the third thing is that at this time, socialism was the most dominant ideology for many.
No, it absolutely wasn't. I mean, there were, among working people, yes, there was a socialist movement. Marx and Engels came through and they critically evaluated the existing socialist literature, a lot of which was utopian and aimed at convincing the ruling class, the capitalists, using moralist arguments about being more humane and things like that. Marx and Engels came through with what they called dialectical materialism, and they applied this to history, and they looked at class struggle and where all of this was likely to end up: collapse of capitalism and socialist revolution. So this is like, he's trying to say the nefarious conspiracy is like to undermine utopian socialism, which wasn't really going anywhere in the first place, but he leaves that part out.
Reasons. Okay, and the idea of socialism is that it will evolve naturally.
That isn't an accurate that isn't what the utopians were even saying at the time. Again, it was more of like that it would just come about on its own naturally. They were engaged in persuasion. They were engaged in active efforts to create change. They didn't teach that it was just going to happen on its own. That's incorrect. That there would have to be some kind of active force to change it. Marx and Engels just, critiqued these people. And it was the earlier ones like Robert Owen, Saint-Simon, Fourier, people like that you can find being written about in Marx and Engels. They also critiqued anarchists like Stirner and others. Anyway, let's go on. It's fucking nonsense.
Okay? But Marx says, no. We cannot allow it to evolve naturally. It will not evolve naturally. We need a revolution. Okay? We need a world revolution.
I mean, yeah, that's accurate. Marx did say that, and for reasons that are very clearly explained in Marx's writings.
Right? So that's a question for us. Why would he say this? Okay? So let's look at...
Because it made sense. But like, according to this guy, he had to have been saying it for some nefarious conspiratorial reason. Like, it didn't just make sense. Marx didn't just make a logical, evidence-based case for it. It was just some distortion. Like, the idea of good evidence and good arguments don't exist in this guy's world. It's just like people saying things, and whoever says them the loudest, I guess, win. That's what shapes history. It's such a bizarre way of thinking.
What socialism is, now let's look at what communism is, okay? Let's look at socialism. All right, I guess socialism is pretty simple. All right, so before you had a feudal society, and then it became industrial. Because it becomes industrial, you have lots and lots of workers.
Again, we were talking about this before. Lots and lots of workers. That didn't just happen, man. The capitalists undertook, read even the first volume of Capital, it's right in there. The capitalists got lots and lots of workers. Like, where did they come from? Did they just get beamed up from another planet? No. They were peasants who got dispossessed from their land forcibly. That's the only reason they went to go work in those factories, was because they got kicked off the land and were unable to provide for themselves. So they had to go work selling their labor power to a capitalist. So that didn't just happen. Like, society, quote, became industrial, so there were, quote, lots of workers. Talk about hand-waving away stuff. And this is the same guy who a minute ago was like, well, that's pretty weird, huh? Like, do you understand cause and effect? Do you understand how things happen in history? Clearly not.
Okay? And you have capitalists. The problem, though, is that capitalism exploits labor. It makes people very unhappy.
No, okay, exploitation is not when you're very unhappy. Exploitation is when you take the goods and services that other people make and you don't give them any kind of direct, credit for that. Like, you're stealing stuff that they make. You are, in other words, making people work for free and keeping the things that they make. Okay? Exploitation. It's making people make surplus value for you. And yeah, secondarily, that can make people unhappy when they become aware of that. But like, exploitation is not when you are unhappy.
Okay, so the workers want change. Then you have the industrialists, the capitalists. The problem is that capital consolidates, okay? So maybe you have 1,000 capitalists to start, but then maybe 10 will take over all the money, okay? All the means of production, the factories. Then maybe one, okay? Because that's how capitalism works. It consolidates. Which means that eventually the capitalists will turn against capitalism as well.
What? No. What does that look like? What does that mean? Capitalists will turn against capitalism. If we're talking about that the free competition period of capitalism ends, yeah. And again, if this guy gets this far, I guarantee you he knows, then he's deliberately saying nonsense. If he understands the point about consolidation, I guarantee you he's consciously spreading nonsense and that he understands better than this. Capitalists turn against capitalism. No, capitalism just consolidates to a point where there is no longer free competition being dominant. There is still free competition in the petty bourgeois strata, the small business sphere. And the purpose that that serves within capitalism is that the big capitalists need the small capitalists to continue to try to innovate, both in terms of new products and also new methods for creating products. And the rewards of being a successful small business person exist to incentivize that continued innovation. However, any successful innovation will be co-opted by the big capitalists. You get bought out, and they don't tolerate that kind of competition anymore. So the competition at this point in imperialism and advanced monopoly capitalism is only really tolerated within the sort of open laboratory, so to speak, of the petty bourgeois strata. But any serious profit-making capacity gets bought out or otherwise seized by the big capitalists. And he's like laughing while he says this, like, wow, what a truth nuke, right? You know, doesn't this just blow your mind? What's blowing my mind is how smug he is about how fucking, while saying all this incredibly wrong shit.
Okay? And because of democracy, because people can vote, they can then together affect political change. And this will lead to socialism.
So again, when he talks about socialism, he's talking about like taxing the rich, leaving capitalists in power, and just taxing the rich, doing some minor wealth redistribution. Why aren't we getting that so much today? We don't see so much of that, and we've actually been seeing less and less of it over the last 50 years, what we call the neoliberal period, as they go back to, you know, original capitalism basically, but in new form, more at the end of capitalism's life. Well, when we got it in the first place, the rate of profit, there's a tendency, as Marx showed, for the rate of profit to decline over time in capitalism. So the longer capitalism goes on, this creates more crises as the rate of profit continues to decline, as the real source of profit is labor. But over time, the production process goes less from labor and more into machinery. There's less profit. I'm summarizing here, but that's the sort of quick overview of it. Variable capital and constant capital, if you want to look that up. Back in the 19-teens, 20s, 30s, there was a better rate of profit. It was easier for capitalists to make concessions. There was also what? Oh, a militant labor movement and a revolutionary communist movement. That is what made the capitalists grant more concessions. They had more of the capacity to do so, and they had much more political pressure on them from the labor movement and communist movement. So this guy's trying to make it out like, oh, people just voted. Well, wait a minute. No, in a bunch of countries, they went fascist and pulled back all the democracy. How do you account for that? Like, this is such a shit explanation of everything he's talking about. But let's go on. Let's let him lay it all out. At some point, there will be a break point to go back to the chat.
What is socialism? Socialism is a redistribution of wealth.
So again, I just have to make the point, for anybody confused about this, when Marxists talk about socialism, Marx used the terms socialism and communism interchangeably. In Marxism-Leninism in the 20th century, it became a common notation or common convention to refer to the lower incomplete stage as socialism and the higher fully developed stage, which we've never reached yet, as communism. To Marx, they were interchangeable. Marx did talk about a lower stage and a higher stage, and then we kind of, you know, in Marxism-Leninism adopted those terms: socialism for the lower stage, communism for the higher, fully developed stage. But this guy's talking about socialism meaning social democracy, meaning you have capitalism, but with some redistribution of wealth. But that is definitely not what a Marxist means.
Okay, a redistribution of wealth. Now, let's, for the sake of simplicity, say there are three classes, okay? You have the rich, you have the middle class, and you have the poor.
No. So again, Marxists talk about class in terms of relationship to the means of production. You either own it, you're able to command a historic amount of capital that has real significance on the world stage. You're a big capitalist. You're very rich from that, living off of the exploited labor of lots and lots of people. You're a small capitalist. And again, this is not a historically great or significant class. Can't make history really on its own. The petty bourgeoisie and then the workers. But it isn't just rich, middle wealth, and poor. Yes, workers are poor. Yes, big capitalists are rich. But let's be a little more precise here.
Okay? Right? So all redistribution is doing is taking the money from the rich and giving it to the poor. You understand?
The hell are you talking about? I mean, that's one way you could redistribute it. The rich definitely have more stuff than the poor have. That's one way you could do it. Where's he going?
But because of this, what happens is the middle class improves in status and power. Okay? So if you look at the system, you would think, okay, look, the poor want the system because they have more money, they have more equality, but also the people who really want the system are the middle class because it means that over time they have more power and status.
He's totally losing me. If you're saying that the middle class grows because you gave the poor money, doesn't that just mean that the poor shrank in size and the middle class grew numerically? But how does it logically follow from there? He's saying that the middle class is growing in status. Okay, I don't even know what point he's trying to make here.
Than the rich, right? And this is a pretty powerful coalition. That's why socialists believe that over time, this is a natural evolution. And this is true for most of human history, right? So
this is true for okay, whoa, I gotta back this up. My brain is rotting here, but
let's, for the sake of simplicity, say there are three classes, okay? You have the rich, you have the middle class, and you have the poor. Okay? Right? So all redistribution is doing is taking the money from the rich and giving it to the poor. You understand? But because of this, what happens is the middle class improves in status and power. Okay? So if you look at the system, you would think, okay, look, the poor want the system because they have more money, they have more equality, but also the people who really want the system are the middle class because it means that over time they have more power and status than the rich.
I'm not even really following what he's saying there, honestly. I mean, I get what he's saying. I don't know why he's saying it at all. So I'm not really following his logic in what he just said, that the middle class has more status than the rich. Like, in what sense? What are you talking about?
Right? And this is a pretty powerful coalition. That's why socialists believe that over time, this is a natural evolution. And this is true for most of human history, right? So after World War II.
Okay, whoa. That this is a natural evolution. Well, what about all the times that the capitalists resisted attempts to redistribute wealth? Like, I don't know, right now, or prior to the revolutionary movement making real gains. So definitely it does not seem like the natural tendency is for the rich to just start giving away their stuff. That does not follow at all. Then he says, for most of human history, and then he says since World War II. I'm pretty sure most of human history goes way further back than World War II.
Europe didn't become communist, it didn't become capitalist, it became socialist.
No, Europe was definitely capitalist after World War II. He's trying to say that social democracy or regulated capitalism is a different system than capitalism. No, the capitalists were still in charge. They just had a counterpower that was threatening to do strikes, that was maybe even threatening to do revolution if the capitalists got too out of line. And you had the Soviet Union right there threatening, and the Eastern Bloc threatening, hey, this could happen to you, do what we say. It wasn't a separate system. It was just capitalism trying to, put on a human face and pretend that it was going to deliver more equality. What happened after the Soviet Union was destroyed? We've seen austerity. What happened after 2008? Austerity, severe austerity. We're at what's happened since the pandemic and the crisis we're in now, even more austerity. So, nothing about what he's saying is true. It's just not true.
It had a very strong welfare system, okay? So just the natural course of human history, socialism will become inevitable.
Yeah, but okay, none of that was even natural or inevitable. It happened because people struggled for it. And again, it happened because there was a revolutionary threat behind it. Nothing about that is a natural evolution. In fact, the very thing that he's saying is a friend of capitalism, communism, was the main threat backing up the demands of the movement for reforms. There's nothing just natural or inherent or happening on its own about that at all.
It doesn't make sense to you guys, okay? Because this is the majority of people. But Marx had problems with this, okay? Marx says, okay, all right, the major problem with this is false consciousness.
I'm not really sure where he's going with that. False consciousness, Marx said, is when people don't have a consciousness that actually matches their class standing in reality. So you are a worker, but you're thinking more like a small capitalist. That's false consciousness, okay? Or like you're the ideas in your head don't match your material reality would be a simple way to say that. I'm not sure what he's talking about is the major problem here.
Okay? You think that this is a natural process, but capitalists, the ruling elite, have a lot of tricks up their sleeves, okay?
Okay, that's factually true.
For example, they can brainwash the workers, right? So,
I mean, brainwashing is a strong term. They use their influence. They use their media. Brainwashing, I mean, what is this? Clockwork Orange, somebody's strapped down to a chair and like forced to watch movies with their eyelids taped open. They're not doing that to people for the most part, but I mean, they are certainly using mass media, which again got developed as the 20th century went on, newspapers, radio, then later television, now the internet, virtual reality even. I mean, they're really developing a lot of forms of media where they can put out capitalist messaging. It's not really brainwashing, it is influence though.
for this to work out, you need to create true consciousness. So you need to destroy religion. You need to revamp the education system. You need to control the media, okay? Otherwise, the capitalists will use the schools, the media, religion to brainwash the workers. And also,
so Marx didn't say you need to control the media straight out. I mean, the workers' revolutionary media was always an underground thing. This is like so tiresome listening to this, but yes, eventually you would set up a dictatorship of the proletariat that's worker run and put out messages countering bourgeois influence and imperialist messaging on the world stage that would carry messages that better reflect workers' interests. What's weird about that? What's nefarious about that?
so these workers need to unite together across the world to have true power, okay? Why? Because the real struggle is one of class, okay? Consciousness.
Well, consciousness is a step. I mean, the class struggle is not just a struggle for consciousness, but I mean, that is part of it.
And for socialism to arise, we need to destroy class, okay? So the idea of the middle class obtaining power, that's bad. What we should have is just everyone the same, okay?
It's not really the idea that the middle class is bad. It's the idea that class itself leads... Well, capitalism is the last stage of class society, because what capitalists create is a society where there's a few capitalists, the very rich that own industry, and it's very consolidated by the end. And then everybody else just works for them. And then there's like a thin layer of small business people who, again, serve that function of innovation. That the capitalists just kind of, just see what develops and then they pick off the more successful ones. But that capitalism itself actually creates these conditions. And so the longer that capitalism runs, that's how you get this. He's saying that the, quote, natural thing is that capitalism will be self-regulating and redistributive enough that workers won't want to do revolution. But it really doesn't do that. I mean, yes, they have thrown workers crumbs as concessions, but even that has been the result of struggle. And they're doing that less and less as time goes on. That's the whole austerity narrative that has dominated most of the 21st century. This guy acts like fascism never existed. The dominant feature of fascism, as Parenti discusses in Black Shirts and Reds, is austerity. Yes, they do war. Yes, the Nazis did the Holocaust and the other fascists helped them. The main day-to-day feature is austerity. And, there's the police state, but that ties back into private property in the first place and enforcing that austerity, making sure that the people who are struggling and homeless and starving don't do anything. They don't start looting, they don't start rioting, and they especially don't do an organized uprising. This guy acts like none of that exists, and the main thing Marx hated was like the middle class. Like, read Capital. It's not about the middle class in any way, shape, or form. This guy's just inventing things.
Quality. Right? And that's the idea of Marxism, destroy all property, okay? That's the main difference between socialism and communism. Socialism is the redistribution of property. Communism is the destruction of property.
So what he's talking about, that's another lie. Social democracy does not redistribute property in the sense that we're talking about a bourgeois property, meaning productive infrastructure, productive workplaces. Social democracy does not redistribute capital. Okay, it redistributes some money, and there's maybe subsidized programs and things like that. But Marxism, yes, ends private, specifically bourgeois property, meaning workplaces, and infrastructure that is maintained by socialized production processes. Many different workers collaborate to, provide electricity or clean water or roads or clothing or whatever it is. That production process is socialized, but the ownership is not socialized. That's what Marxism is about. This guy's just talking about, like European social democracy or something, just having a welfare state. He said that earlier. And he's making a very poor case for all of that. I'm like kind of waiting for him to say something that matters at this point.
When we do it this way, what happens is that the middle class now lose status, right?
The middle class, so-called, not defined at all really by him, is a blip in historical development. I mean, the main classes are the capitalists and the proletarians. So he's acting like he's stumbled onto some big secret that he's, again, truth nuke. But like, what is he saying here? It doesn't make sense, and we're just going in circles anyway.
So it's both the rich and middle class that suffer under communism, and therefore they will probably unite together against the poor. You understand? So it sounds similar, socialism and communism, but it's night and day. Socialism seems like the natural evolution of things. Okay?
Does it? It doesn't. It doesn't to me at all. I don't. That doesn't make any sense. I don't see logically why that would be the next step whatsoever. He hasn't made that case at all. It's full of holes.
Okay? And so it sounds right. So why is Marx squaring around this? Okay? He also says that, okay, you also need a party. You also need a vanguard, an elite, to destroy the false consciousness, unite the workers, and create a communist society. And when they do that, when system is completely communist, then the party will give up power and you will have a socialist paradise. But then the question then is, why does the party give up power? Right? So if the party is capable of creating consciousness, why don't they just switch to a different false consciousness? Okay? So the problem with Marx is that it's working on socialism and making it more extreme. It's also making it more confusing.
I thought he was just making the case that what he was saying had nothing to do with social democracy, what he's calling socialism. From his description, social democracy is redistributing property, which it isn't. And then that Marxism is trying to abolish private property. Well, that sounds pretty different to me. And then he's saying that, well, once the party exists, it doesn't want to give up power. We have never gotten anywhere near to the point, because the revolution stalled, to the point where the party was no longer necessary. We've never gotten anywhere near that point. Only a third of the world, and mostly the less developed world, had gone socialist. So this just betrays a complete lack of understanding. This is just fascist, anti-communist propaganda. That's what this is.
And why would he do that? Okay, it's very confusing now.
It's not confusing at all. He's trying to tell you that it's confusing. It isn't confusing at all.
All right? And my argument to you is that when this happens, when an idea becomes more extreme, the intention is to discredit it, to make it illegitimate, to destroy the idea.
What are you talking about? Like, he's saying that like it's some universal law. What are you talking about? He's saying that Marxism makes social democracy more extreme to discredit it. I can't think of a single example of Marx doing that, and I've read a fair amount of Marx at this point. He just made that up.
All right? So if you think about it, according to game theory, the people responsible
According to game theory, anyway,
for communism is not Marx. The people responsible for communism are the capitalists.
What? How did you arrive? That was such a leap in logic. How did you arrive at that?
The ruling elite. Because they want to destroy the idea of socialism, right? They don't want this unity between the middle class and the workers. They want the middle class to remain with the nobility and the oligarchy, okay? Does that make sense? All right, so let me show how this works. All right, so in the feudal economy, you have the monarch and the nobility, okay? And the monarch and nobility have power through three mechanisms. First of all, they control the land, they control the military, and they control the religion, okay? So this is the status quo. And then the peasants are the people who work the land. And this was true for most of Catholic Europe. But then with the rise of industrialism, you have new people come into power, okay? So for example, you have the bourgeoisie. Well, the bourgeoisie.
Can I just say, why did he refer to it as Catholic Europe? That is like the weirdest take on like creating historic or, stratifying historical periods. Also, the capitalists engaged in this struggle largely without the help of communists. What is he even talking about there?
Just the capitalists, the factory owners, okay? And because of the bourgeoisie, you now have the workers. And then because of this industrial economy, you have the middle class. Okay? The middle class are just like lawyers, teachers, accountants, journalists.
Teachers. What were teachers like in, I don't know, the 1850s? Does this guy have any idea what he's talking about? None whatsoever. I mean, this isn't like modern America where there's like Better Call Saul advertising on billboards. Lawyers were not really a thing that like common people dealt with that much. My mind is blown at the absolute poor quality of this entire presentation. You would have to be so green to believe any of this. You'd have to be like 12 years old to believe any of this. You'd have to be never exposed. You'd have to have no education to believe any of this. Any of this. This is just, I was having more fun with this initially. Now I'm just trying to manage. It's like diarrhea fire hose. This guy just blasting fascist lies. I'm turning into just the red face anger emoji at this point. Like, this is not fun. This guy's just full of shit. Let's check in with the chat. I haven't checked in with the chat in like forever. I gotta scroll back up. Yeah, I as I was saying before, like I needed you guys to help me with this. The capitalists realize in their hearts they don't want to be the bad guy anymore and hand the key to the city to the workers. I mean, that's more of like what the utopian socialists were hoping for. But it's definitely not what happened. You don't get it. Capitalism is competition and nothing else. Don't go deeper into it. Yeah, no, capitalism is privately owned industry. I mean, they nationalized some of it among the capitalist class, but for the most part, privately owned industry operated for profit according to the whims of the capitalists. I mean, there's a good definition of it in Fascism and Social Revolution. But yeah, I mean, we can talk about what capitalism is. This guy has not done any definitions or anything like that. What is bro talking about? This actually makes no sense. Middle class becomes more powerful than the rich, ? That's where I'm at. Like, my brain is buffering just listening to this guy. Like, what is he talking about? This is just a load of gobbledygook. This is the guy who's being promoted by the algorithm. Like, this is the guy getting blasted all over YouTube. Glad this guy is getting dunked on by more people lately. Macaroni and cheese is speaking gibberish. He's trying to say that unequal power will always exist. Socialism just changes who gets to be rich. Who is this guy anyway? Just some social democrat not existing in the same plane of reality as everyone else? The great democratic Marshall Plan of infinite solidarity. Social democrats will unironically spend their whole lives fighting for a little welfare and subsidies and have it stripped away the second push comes to shove, then not question their methodology or goals at all. Again, I have it on the channel. I recommend it every time that we talk about social democracy. Reform or Revolution by Rosa Luxemburg. It's less than 3 hours long. It is a must listen. When I get the S4A recommended reading list going, it'll definitely be part of it. Anyone in DSA needs to know Reform or Revolution inside out. On the subject of brainwashing, I wish someone would wash my brain after this. Absolutely. Wasn't the middle class another term for the bourgeoisie at the time? I remember hearing something like that. You are correct that originally the upper class was the aristocracy, the middle class was the bourgeoisie. I can't believe he's going off of that, though. I can't believe he's going off of that. If he was trying to say that, a lot of the rest of what he was saying would make even less sense. So that would have really been important for him to have clarified that, and he did not clarify that. I got to say, the last 5 minutes of this really wore me down. I mean, the last video 5 minutes, not like real-time 5 minutes. Listening to this guy ramble, I'm like, I feel it's one of those, like the old Dare commercial or whatever, like, this is your brain on drugs, and he cracks the egg in the pan, and he's like, any questions? That is what is happening to me watching this video. Is this guy pretending to be a communist? No, I think he's a social democrat. He's trying to draw a dinosaur. People are commenting about how illegible the handwriting is. This is exactly what RT influenced people sound like, though. Has it gotten that bad? I haven't listened to any RT things in years, so is this what it's become like now? The state of Russian social democracy? I don't know. Maybe communism will break through that as it's devolving into some weird, fascist social democratic hybrid. Well, yeah, the thing about game theory, when he threw that in there, he's like, well, and according to game theory, right? And I'm like, no, nothing you just said reminds me of, like, I don't see the relationship to game theory in any way, and he didn't explain that. Game theory is his intellectual magnum opus. Yeah, he didn't explain that at all. His becoming popular reflects poorly on our society. Well, he's being pushed like crazy. I think this is another, like, capitalist Hail Mary trying to push this guy on people just to confuse them. Bro's feigning coherence. Drawing a snowman. All those circles. He needs to have a circle for the Illuminati. Absolutely. Yeah, where's the Jesuits in here? Come on. Talk about the Cathars. Talk about the Rosicrucians. He's gesturing towards something as if there are people in the room with him. He's just playing all sides in case of any revolution possible. He'll worm his way to safety, saying, "See, I predicted you guys would win." He should just get a job, like, doing something useful. This is not useful to anyone. Like, I feel like no matter who took power, this would be like, we could do better than this guy. This guy is at a point where even a capitalist would refute his claims, yeah. I think game theory is real. It explains best theoretical play in simple games involving rounds where you either cooperate or betray other players. It explains accurately tit-for-tat behaviors in social animals like vampire bats. Also, it talks a lot about the middle class, apparently. So he is talking into an empty room. He's LARPing as a teacher here. I need your emotional support right now. We are, by the way, 13 minutes into that, and it's at 1.5 speed. So that is actually 13 plus half of 13 of the original video. We're going to keep going. We are going to keep going. Yeah, it's conspiracy theory grifting, absolutely. Protein Shake is explaining his Benadryl-driven hallucinations. DSA will read Reform and Revolution, then start doing purges. He's a CIA psyop, I'll believe that. Jiangist moderate thought. Reform or Revolution is also good for understanding the difference between tactics and strategy. I was reading it with my Green Study group. Good for you. Yeah, that's like I said, DSA, but Green Party too. Stock up, read Reform or Revolution by Luxembourg. Very important text to understand. We're 5 minutes in. We're still all confused. Drew a penis too. Is that what this is really about? All of his bubbles and things actually add up to subliminal messages as visuals. We're so fixated on the nonsense he's saying verbally, we're just totally missing. It's slipping right into our subconscious what he's actually drawing in the shapes of the words that he's putting on the board. I see so many liberals talk about game theory and information theory as catch-alls for stupid politics, yeah. If you had to choose one to be your mentor, this guy or Jordan Peterson? This guy, I would pick this guy because Jordan Peterson, he's cooked. He is so done. I think Jordan Peterson, his brain is just meat. If you were to do a craniotomy, there's just 3 steaks attached to the top of his brainstem at this point. There's just like Worcestershire sauce leaking out of his eyes at this point. This guy, I would love to at least pick his brain on some things, ask some questions like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, where did he come up with any of this? I would love to see somebody like actually sit down and go point by point, just like we're doing. Wait, no, you just said XYZ. Explain that, support that point. That would actually, I think that would be fun. What's less fun for me about doing this response video and trying to, debunk this or whatever for the audience is like, he's like a freight train of bullshit. Like he is just going and going and going. It's not even amusing. It's like, actually kind of like wearing me down. Ugh. Revisionist maxing. No, he's in a different ballpark. Yes, he did get interviewed by Mehdi Hassan, yeah. Communism is when capitalism. John Kiriakou recommended this guy, so he is CIA. Jimmy Dore. I just remember Jimmy Dore pushing that guy. He is some anti-Marxist, self-proclaimed professor with a false conception of game theory up his sleeve. CIA not hiring competent people nowadays, huh? If you if you nod and say right, you get an A in this guy's class. That's all he really wants. He just wants validation. He's like, this whole thing came out of, this is what he was trying to write articles on back in the day. Nobody would publish them. And just what we're seeing here is revenge. I just want to say I really appreciate your commentary on people like this, because I actually used to think this guy was smart for a while. Absolutely. Yeah, I am looking forward to the Professor Jiang RFK Jr. collab. That's going to be good. Brandolini's law, the amount of energy needed to refute bullshit is an order of magnitude bigger than that needed to produce it. It's what we're all about here, though. The thing is, like, once you learn Marxism, like, you're good for a while. It is really like a meta toolkit for understanding so many other things. All right, caught up with the chat. I'm renewed. Spirit is refreshed. Let's go back into the... Oh no, I just lost it again. All right, I'm just going to press play, trusting everything will... here we go.
As people who support the industrial economy, right? Now, when this happens...
And I just have to say, I think what's wearing me down so much is I'm having to stop him like every 5 words. I will try to let it go for a little bit longer. Maybe we'll get through more of this.
When you have a new groups of people emerge, you now have tension and violence, okay? And this is ultimately what led to the French Revolution, where the new order, okay, these people worked together to overthrow the old order. And this led to the Napoleonic Wars, 7 wars fought between France and everyone else, okay? And that led to the deaths of millions, tens of millions of people in Europe. It was a deadly war. And after Napoleon was defeated, all the leaders, the nobility of Europe got together and decided that from now on, we will no longer fight war, okay? They created something called the Concert of Europe. The Concert of Europe is basically these different monarchies agreeing to resolve the differences over negotiations rather than on the battlefield. So think of it as the United Nations, okay? And it worked.
I need the chat again. I need the chat. Please help. Yeah, back into the toilet. Jiang went in a big Manosphere stream and blamed OnlyFans workers for the decline of, quote, masculinity. So he is really just working down a checklist of like every single fascist talking point. All right, I should let him cook. I'm being told by the chat to let him cook.
Really, really well. The problem is that it worked too well, because you're not resolving this problem, okay? You're not resolving this conflict between the new order and the old order, right? These people want to maintain the status quo, but these people, the industrial economy, wants a new order that allows for democracy, okay? Liberalism, okay? Socialism. Okay? So a more redistribution of wealth, greater participation in the political system, and the limitations of the religion, okay? So basically, the French Revolution, all right? So right now, this system was created to avoid the French Revolution, but because of peace, the ingredients for the French Revolution are increasing, okay? And this led to something called the 1848 revolutions. 1848 revolutions. And this happened throughout the entirety of Europe, where each place there was a uprising, a combination of these people, the bourgeoisie, middle class, and workers, who called for changes in government, okay? Some places were violent, some places were peaceful. Some places focus more on democracy, some places focus more on liberalism, some places focus more on socialism, okay?
So we got democracy, liberalism, and social democracy as being different. This is not a high quality explanation.
All right? So does that make sense? After 1848, what the leaders of Europe recognize is that, you know what, if we don't do anything about this situation, eventually the new order is going to consume us. The new order of the bourgeoisie, middle class, and workers, this alliance is going to destroy us. So what can we do about it?
Oh, and just to point out, he is definitely referring to the bourgeoisie and middle class as different at this point. So
their solution is we have to divide them, okay? We have to divide them. So before, the conflicts were about power, status, religion, okay? So the first idea is...
No, I mean, anyway, I might have to bail at this point. This is like just too much bullshit. Hopefully what I've said so far, like I can't keep up with every sentence like writing a textbook to overcome what he said. If this is the best capital supporters can do, the rate of profit is cooked. He really is just a fascist. I can't understand what he's saying. It's all gibberish to me. Why does Mr. Dr. Professor Jiang derive joy from my suffering? I'm trying, bro, but it's really in one ear and out the other with whatever he's saying at this point. It's a fascist talking point speed run, but make it Khan Academy. I like, I get it now in all caps. Two separate, is one message. I get it now is a second comment. The Robert Baron was socialism. I see. Socialism, communism, capitalism, liberalism, monarchism. If I say them all at once, I'm smart. The limitations of religion, question mark, exclamation point. This is this is the best behaved class of all time. I know, they're dead silent. This is like a caricature of like something you'd see in like a 70s or 80s movie of like a montage of like bored students, kind of like in the Ferris Bueller scenes with Ben Stein, where they're like popping gum and staring out the window and just like zombified. Except what Ben Stein was saying was way more coherent than this. But this is like, well, again, you know, and we see this with all the fascists. Jordan Peterson, people would say, is a stupid person's idea, or at least an ignorant person's idea of a smart person or an educated person. I think this guy is following that exact playbook. People, like, the only people this would work on is people who like don't even know what monarchism is, like that have absolutely no knowledge base whatsoever. As I was saying before, like a 12-year-old or something. The only people this would work on is people who have like absolutely no knowledge whatsoever. And so again, it's like stupid person's idea of a smart person. How did he just go from the French Revolution to 1848 in a split second? Like, I'm morbidly curious to see where this stream ends up, actually. Or this video. This is something my baby boomer dad listens to while telling me to open my mind. Exactly, it's libertarian. This is like, yeah, when people, this is like sort of like D-tier geopolitics stuff. People that have no taste, are not in the loop, not clued in whatsoever. They catch this guy. They miss all the like better, slightly more coherent stuff. This like I said, it's you know, conspiracy, anti-communist, fascist propaganda slop that is left over when you scrape the slop bin after everything else has been consumed. That's what this is. This is like the, you know, the pink meat slime of the conspiracy slop industry. Are you an iPad toddler? Have I got a class video for you, fascists? I used to listen to him when my own politics were incoherent. There are unfortunately plenty of people listening to this guy. Well, thank you for being proud of me. The only reason why anybody would listen to this is if they were incredibly lost and didn't know shit from leftism, not even Marxism. Thanks for educating people on Marxism so they don't listen to this dumbass shit uncritically. I mean, we really got to get this out to more people, absolutely. All right, let's resume.
Let's create the idea that the real conflict is class.
Let me just say, I love how incoherent this board is at this point. It's just like scribbles everywhere.
Okay? So the real enemy is not between nobility and the bourgeoisie. Okay? The real enemy is between the bourgeoisie and the workers.
Those are both classes, dumb fuck. Wow.
Okay? This is the real conflict. Right?
Yeah, so it's still class struggle. That's pretty much what Marx was saying. And that's accurate. That is correct.
Second is that we have to discredit these people and make this movement seem extreme.
Like what movement? He's not even being, he keeps talking these vague generalities using pronouns, and like, you're like, which noun are you referring to? This and these people? You're like, who are you referring to? I can't even follow. Like, his logic is bad even when he's being clear about who he's referring to. Then when you add in a lack of clarity on like literally what is being even said, I can't follow the logic at all. Marx was like, these people and this circle, and like he's got bourgeoisie, middle class is circled, and then workers, then the whole thing is circled, and he's like just points to that like these people. What do you mean, bourgeoisie, middle class, and workers? Who are you referring to?
Radical, zealous, okay? And you do that by saying, okay, no property. What we want is not a more fair society. What we want is a completely equal society.
People were not really talking about a welfare society at this point. Marx was looking at the way that capitalism was creating this completely dispossessed class, the proletariat, that was expanding and expanding, and he thought it would keep expanding because that would be in the capitalist interest. Okay, that was accurate. What we've seen about the changing class composition of capitalist societies is that they become more and more proletarian. Like you look at the US, originally was like 10% proletarian. Now it's flipped. It's 90% proletarian. And that's completely accurate. Like, what's the objection here? And then he's like, well, you're trying to pretend people were talking about just taxing the rich more at this point, and that Marx was like out to undermine that. And his whole thing here throughout this video is that Marxism is to discredit social democracy. The thing is that, like, when social democracy stepped up, and he eventually is going to talk about the Russian Revolution in this video, but like in World War I, social democracy discredited itself. And I'd be very curious to hear what he says about that.
Where no one has any money, no one has any rights, no one has any freedom.
What? People have rights in socialism. You don't have money because you don't need money because there's just surplus. Anything you need, you can just have it made. It's there, it's ready. You don't need money because you don't need to manage scarcity, because scarcity has been completely overcome at that point. So you don't need money because money is there to, control the distribution of goods and services, etc. I mean, it's a function that it serves. And this guy's like, and you have no rights. Whoa, threw that one in out of left field. What is the motivation for saying that? That in Marxism you have no rights? Why would Marx advocate for a system where no one has any rights? Why would anyone advocate for a system where no one has any rights? Why would you even say that? That isn't true. That isn't how communism works. You have rights in communism. What are you talking about? Please back this up with some kind of evidence.
Communism, okay? And the third way you legitimize it is say that this is an international conspiracy. Hey guys, Jews. These communists are a secret society who want to take over the entire world.
Wow, he just went full Hitler right here. He just went full Hitler.
So it's not...
Oh, so that answers my question about why would anyone advocate for a society with no rights? Oh, because it's the satanic conspiracy of Jews is what he's saying. That's his position. I'm starting to get it now. He's a fucking fascist. He's a fascist. You want to know what fascism looks like? This guy is a new face of fascism.
That, these workers just want more rights. No. These workers are tools in an actual conspiracy to conquer the entire world. They are funded by Jews.
Woo! This guy has officially just gone to the fucking moon. He is done. He is done. How is anybody listening to this and not hearing what he's saying? I mean, this sounds to me like he's saying this as his actual position, not like somebody was saying this about communists. I'm pretty sure he just said that fucking communism is a Jewish conspiracy to deprive everyone of their rights. Did he or did he not just say that?
By capitalists, by the British. Okay.
Wow. I'm stunned that this guy is just getting up there and saying this.
Okay? But they're not Germans, they're not French. They're not us. You understand? So you think about it, communism was a psyop. Okay?
But wait, didn't you just say that communism is a virus created by capitalism? Then you just said that it's not from us, not from Germany or France or whatever, but those countries are capitalist. He's just contradicting himself left and right at every turn.
A tool used by the elite, by the nobility, to make the movement of democracy, socialism, and liberalism illegitimate. Okay, this is his propaganda.
Now he's saying, not that it's the capitalists who created communism, it's the outgoing feudal nobility that did it. This completely contradicts what he said before. I can't even keep up with like what his position is here.
Okay, doesn't make sense, guys. All right.
No, it does not make sense. You can't just be like, the moon's made of cheese, and also I'm made of cheese, and you're made of cheese, and also cheese is it comes from books, and books are from not the middle of the earth, but sort of like the outside of the earth, which is on the moon. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't at all. Like, not even a tiny bit.
So let's look at the evidence for this. All right, so this is the
Okay, so I think that's his actual position. Now we're talking about evidence before. Let's discuss evidence. He's talking about evidence.
1848 revolutions. So what happened was that because of peace, you have overpopulation, you have economic growth, okay? That led to inequality, that led to corruption, that led to conflict between the bourgeoisie, the new rising powers, and the nobility.
What are you talking about? Like, he's just throwing these things out there. Like, no wonder, this guy wasn't able to publish any articles or anything.
Status quo powers, okay? And that's why you have these revolutions throughout Europe, okay? So look at France, okay? This is a French, you look at like all these places. It's happening all at the same time. Okay, everywhere. And again, different systems will respond differently. The only place in Europe that's really spared these revolutions is England.
Well, England had its shit going on a lot earlier, like in the 1600s. So what is the point here?
The reason why is that England has colonies where if you're not happy, you can go somewhere else. It can.
That's partly true, but you're also, just from a timeline perspective, not accounting for very important points of evidence.
Or the United States or Australia, New Zealand, okay? But you can leave. But everyone else is stuck where they are, and they are fighting for more rights. And again, this puts the fear of God into the European nobility, okay? For the longest time, they got along, they maintained peace, but now the bourgeoisie.
For the longest time, they got along. If anybody wants some extra credit reading, or you got some spare time, you want to look up the history of wars in Europe prior to this period, I think They All Got Along is not really the best synopsis of that entire, not the best encapsulation of that period of history.
The industrialists, the capitalists, want to overthrow the regime. Okay? So what they do now is they sponsor the creation of communism to divide the capitalists, the middle class, and the workers against each other. Okay? To create the idea of class conflict.
No, actually, the capitalist system itself is a system of class conflict. The capitalists exploit the workers. I don't know if you know anything about the conditions that workers were being subjected to at that point. The system itself is a system of class contradiction and class conflict. It's strife. I mean, what is this guy talking about? It's like everybody got along great. Then the communists came in and just started like telling people it was a problem. Yeah, not really. That's not really what happened. And no one should take you seriously talking about this.
All right?
No, not okay.
Okay. So Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, all right, they write something called the Communist Manifesto. And this comes after the 1848 revolutions. Because after the 1848 revolution, they were absolutely convinced that Europe is ready for a global revolution, okay? And
so no, the Communist Manifesto was written before the 1848 revolutions, but go on.
This is their agenda. And this is also a secret document, because at this time, the communists are a secret society all around Europe. Okay? And I would argue that this was probably being funded by the nobility.
Okay, do you got any evidence for that? And also, no, it wasn't.
Okay? Okay, so it calls for all abolition of property. All right? No more property. That's pretty extreme.
No, that's actually the logical consequence of capitalism, because capitalism is going to consolidate all productive property into the hands of very few people. Then the communists just advocate taking the additional step of making it public. It's not extreme at all. That's where capitalism is going to get you. But this guy, I guess, thinks that that's more extreme. Well, he doesn't think the Holocaust happened. He'll tell you that the Holocaust didn't happen. He thinks that, the end of private property is more extreme than multiple world wars and the Holocaust and everything else. Although I guess to him, the communists just caused all that. This is deranged, batshit, bottom of the barrel conspiracy bullshit. You know what? This is actually where I'm tapping out. I am all set. All right. The stream has to end sometime, and I think the vomit just finally got high enough in my throat that I think I'm all set. So let's catch up with the chat. Jiang reminds me of a coworker who used Google AI to tell him why being, quote, apolitical is the correct position. Well, and then what is being, quote, apolitical in actually a time of strong political currents? How do you end up being at that point? You're just going to gravitate toward whatever is most dominant, the status quo, because rising above that actually requires a lot of critical thinking and a lot of effort in terms of just not accepting the slop that the ruling class is putting out. So you're just going to, when people say neither left nor right, it's always parentheses right. You end up on the right because that's what's dominant. Yeah, being quote unquote apolitical, you just get caught up in whatever's dominant. And you won't even be able to recognize that that's why you have adopted that position. My dad once used AI to look for anti-communist talking points, but it only gave him ones he had already used. He has used all of them, but is petty bourgeois, so he won't change. I mean, these people really think the system has a future at this point. Look at the extremes it's going to maintain itself. Capitalism is dying. Manifestation of... yeah, Jiang is a manifestation of AI-induced delusions. Yeah, this is like AI psychosis personified, basically. You know what's extra funny about this? He's 100% improving. There's literally no other way to pull this off. If he had a script for this, that would be impressive, yeah. Freedom for whom? Oh, everybody, gestures hand. That was the most kind of maddening. I was really caught. I think why my energy was getting so drained watching this was because part of me that knows things was sitting back and just kind of like smirking and smugly chuckling, like, I can't believe anyone's believing this bullshit. But then the other part of me, it's like the Frosted Mini Wheats commercial, but the kid in me, but the educator in me, like the student in me is like, how can anybody believe this crap? The educator in me is like, I know people are believing this crap and I'm going to have to help untangle it for them. And like, that's not a very funny thought at all. If this was scripted or storyboarded out in some way, I'd be impressed. Socialism is when no freedom. Yeah, so true. Yeah, you don't have the right to exploit people. But see, they don't believe employment is exploitation because they fundamentally don't want anything to do with the idea of like surplus value extraction, etc. It's all fair and square, folks. Don't listen to those satanic Marxists. Yeah, Marx, but then again, Marx was rich. Are you not listening to this guy? Human rights in capitalism are a sham. Capitalists will say you don't get rights in communism. Meanwhile, ICE is kidnapping children from schools and they supposedly care about so-called human rights. Trump was just on the other day asked about doing universal childcare, and he's like, we can't do we're not doing childcare. We got to fight wars and stuff. We're fighting wars. We can't do childcare. These are your choices, people. If you wanted a system where nobody had any rights, why would you even admit that? Yeah, I've read a lot of Marx. They don't talk about nobody having any rights ever at anywhere in the readings ever. Somebody's like, I just came back to the stream and it's like international conspiracy Jews. I couldn't believe he just dropped that like so casually. And that wasn't even the conclusion. That was like a third of the way into the stream or video, whatever. He's not streaming, but the Chinese CIA are taking baby steps, sending out their worst first. Yeah, this guy is just part of a ploy. So they're hiding their true power level. The only people I know who want a system where people have no rights are doomerists and fervently racist and sexist people. Yeah, fascists, basically. Dude went from game theory history to Nick Fuentes. He is just Hitler. Jiminy Christmas. What in the fuck? All the comments are like, what did he just say? He literally just a Hitlerite. Yeah. So I think the conclusion here is Professor, and I use that term advisedly. Well, literally, he just calls himself that. Jiang is a crackpot liar. I can update the title now. Is a Hitlerite crackpot. Crackpot is a Hitlerite liar. There we go. Professor Jiang Xueqin is a Hitlerite liar. He is a Nazi, absolutely. He's a fucking Nazi. Jews, but that's just a theory, a game theory. He is a conspiracy theory grifter, absolutely. I don't even think the LaRouches go this hard. I wish I was in a secret communist society funded by Jews to take over the entire world. This is what happens if you let your racist uncle have a YouTube channel on a blackboard. Yeah, don't send your racist uncle to Yale, absolutely. I just choked on my meal when he said Jews. They're not us. Yeah, that's a quote. That's what he said. They're not us. I wonder if in the rest of the video, like now, okay, I turned the video off, but now I'm getting curious. At some point, does he explain like why, quote, the Jews are doing this? I'm not going to find out tonight, though. Not going to do that. It's crazy how common this is, though. Like the rise of Zionism is giving fuel to anti-Semitic misconceptions and conspiracy theories. Almost like Zionism and the behavior of Israel is really not good for Jewish people who have historically been marginalized and really struggled with violence and discrimination against them. And this is not helping the world Jewish population in any way. In fact, is making Jewish people more vulnerable. A tool used by the elite. Yeah, we know what you mean, guy. Absolutely. Does he even understand what he's saying? I feel like he's just rambling. Oh yeah, he does. You don't get to this point without some understanding. Yeah. I thought it would be like the LaRoucheites with British bankers as a stand-in, but no, he went all the way. This guy is just a Hitler speech on Vyvanse. Here's the evidence. Pay attention. Oh, yeah, and then the evidence is just more like argumentation. Anyway, it wasn't like... he just like drew on a map. He's like, here's the evidence. This guy teaches in fucking China. He's pulling the Jew card this early. Maybe if he goes back to the communism is capital is... Maybe if he goes back to the communism is capitalism line, we will pull this off. So I gotta tell you, I did not realize he was just fucking Hitler going into this video. I thought he was just doing random conspiracy shit. He went full Hitler like 20 minutes into the video. Dude is working in private charter school. China's letting the same shit slide, like American millionaires making their own schools without any standards, like Kanye West. Yeah. Yes, abolish private school 100%. Fuck private school. Get rid of it. New Chinese State Department position. We trade with Israel because communism is Jewish. Seriously, like this does not reflect well at all. Is this going to be on the test? Yeah. He taught at Shenzhen Middle School in 2008 and was involved with liberal reforms there, but test scores fell and he got kicked out within a year. You don't say. I can't believe I just watched a fucking Hitlerite. That's the main thing. How is this still up on YouTube? He just literally is like, the fucking Jews want to just like strip you of your rights. He's just out there saying that. Yeah, so I don't know if this is true. It says he's currently located in Shanghai. He was playing a Hitler speech and telling his class to appreciate his voice. I think the vid got taken down, though. What the fuck? Jiang is a China-approved Nazi. Okay, so yeah, this is Nazi slop. If anybody, so my internet just keeps cutting out. If anybody's got links on this, send it to me. I think we've been going long enough for today, though. Mein Kampf Academy. People might have missed the point that this professor reiterates Hitler's position on dialectics. Yeah. He literally has a video called Dawn of the Jews. Nobody mentioned this at the beginning of the stream. Nobody expects a Hitler, but when you see a Hitler, you should do something about it. This is Socialism for All, and I endorse this message. Did you see the thing where he beats his kid at the pool? We were talking about it before. I haven't watched it yet. This really opened a whole can of worms here, I gotta say. I actually recall he does engage in race science as part of his whole game theory shtick. Yeah, report the fucking channel. This is incredible. So I actually need to do a deeper dive. Fake professor is a real Nazi. Nobody knew about this motherfucker at the beginning of the stream. I didn't know how nobody mentioned that he was an actual Nazi. Thank you for the secret history Pax Judaica thing. I can't believe this. He has 2.2 million subs. Normal world. Normal dying capitalist world. 49-minute timestamp. Thank you. I think I just found like my new pet project here. YouTube won't remove this guy. They're fine with his content. Seems like it. Nazism is the status quo on YouTube. Quite a day. Caught up with the chat. 100 people in the chat still. Hope everybody had a good time. I'm reeling from this experience. That was really something. I don't even know what to say. Thanks again to everybody who showed up today and helped to make this what it is. Comments under the Dawn of the Jews video are atrocious. I would kind of expect them to be. Yeah, actually. Fascism's a real problem, folks, and it's coming from various corners of the world, let's say. Woo! Thanks to the patrons and Buy Me a Coffee supporters again, and we are going to see you soon in the next video.